Well, I guess first of all, as I do with most people, especially those that I have never actually spoke much with, is get to know you a little. Tell me who Michael Armstrong is. How'd you get into what you're doing? I listened to your episode about your spiritual awakening, but I would love to hear more about that. And, if you want to share it with my audience as well, I think it'd be a really interesting story to tell. But anyways, just in general, what you would describe yourself as and what you enjoy, what you do, why you do this kind of thing.
Yeah, so I had a spiritual awakening. It's probably about 9 years ago or so. And my whole life I've been an entrepreneur, just making startups, different businesses. Launched a startup in Silicon Valley at one of the largest tech conferences. And I've just really been involved in tech. Growing up, I saw the internet as something quite magnificent that could transform the world. And so this experience that I had completely changed my life, completely changed the path that I was on in terms of business and everything that I was headed. And just to catch your audience up on what the experience was, I was in a kitchen, sitting next to my friend. We were just chatting about like artificial intelligence and robots and what's the difference between a human and a robot. And we started to get deep into like the cellular structure of the human system, the atoms that make it up, and just kind of like the guy I was talking to, he considered himself to be like an atheist.
Okay.
And at the time I considered myself to be a Christian. I had born and raised Christian. And so we had very fun dialogues, him and I, quite often.
I bet.
and so he was talking about how, if a robot, you build a very advanced robot and you give it artificial intelligence, it's going to be pretty indistinguishable between a human. Humans themselves are biological robots, essentially.
Yep.
And he says, if you pull a battery out of a robot, it just turns off. Like it doesn't go to like heaven or anything like that.
Right.
And I was like, wow, you got a good point. And I think this part is very important in this awakening story, in that I experienced some fear. And I felt as though for probably the first time in my life, like maybe this whole religion thing that I had been born and raised to believe, maybe it's just over once our battery's pulled out.
Yeah.
And so I remember having this very strong feeling of like, ooh, that's kind of spooky. Like this, we literally, you could die and it could just be over. Like that's it, game over. And I was like, I mean, that would kind of suck. Like that just, to me, that felt kind of pointless.
Yeah. Was that the first time you actually really considered that idea?
It was the first time I really considered it and felt some strong emotions with it. I mean, I'd always had a doubt or here and there, but very strong programming. So I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so that was in me. And we just kept going down. We kept talking. And I was like, I don't know. I was open-minded about the whole conversation. And at some point, when we were diving deep into the atomic structure of the human body, what makes up our cells and everything, this tunnel came from the right side. It was like a tunnel of light, and it stopped in front of me. And I just like zoomed in front of it. And keep in mind that him and I are just in the kitchen. We're just chilling, chatting.
Was there any psychedelics involved in this situation?
No psychedelics. Yeah. No psychedelics. Like, maybe we smoked some weed like a couple hours earlier. Or
right.
We're just like hanging out with buddies and stuff. But yeah, no psychedelics. We're not tripping out at all.
Wow. Okay.
And I go through this tunnel of light, and all of a sudden I see this big ball of light in front of me. And it looks like all these little like water droplets like coming off of it and splashing back into it. And there's this presence there, almost like I don't even know what to call it. It was a being that was very much there, but also almost invisible. Like it was like speaking with someone who you can feel is there, but you can't see is there. But because you can feel them so strongly, you can almost see them. Hard to describe, but very much a presence.
I know what you mean. I've had similar experiences.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. I would love to hear about those as well.
Mm.
And so so this being is essentially telling me, okay, this, what you're looking at is the source of everything. This is like source energy, and all those things flying off of source are souls all having their experience, and then they go and splash right back into source energy. And I was like, wow.
I'd say, yeah. Wow, yeah. Wow, indeed.
Yeah. And so I am getting all these downloads, like all these downloads are coming in. And I like just like zoom back out. And I was like, every cell in my body was vibrating. It just felt like pure joy flowing through my system. And I was just like, oh, what was that? I look over at my friend and he looks at me, he goes, what was that? And I was like, wait, you were there too? And he was like, yeah. He's like, that was the craziest thing ever. Like, and I was like, wait, we both went in and out of this thing at the same time. And there's
crap, man.
Right. Yeah. There's something about the two people experiencing it that just validated the experience. It wasn't like,
course.
Crazy thing, it was two people, an atheist and, Christian, and they both experienced this like insane thing. And we're just like laughing, like we couldn't stop laughing. It was just like so much joy and excitement. And we were like trying to like figure it out also.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point we're like, do you remember this like being that was there? Like there was some sort of like presence, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah. And once we both acknowledged that this presence was there, that tunnel came back, and this time for a shorter period of time. And after that, it was like, I was like, okay, that was the craziest experience of my life thus far. And he was like freaking out about it. I'm like, we just met God. Like God, it's like, and so we called this presence it was like this like presence that was there. And there was this one takeaway that was the strongest download that I received. And it was that death, no big deal. Death is like a transition. It's like walking in a door and then you walk through the next door. Like this thing that we're experiencing goes on forever. And death is simply a transition. And after that happened, I went online and I went on like every message board. This is like maybe just before like Facebook, maybe MySpace, but like the way to get information was you go to message boards. And so I signed up to like the Christian message board, the Islam, Buddhism message board, philosophy, every single one I could find. And I wrote down my story and I said, does anyone know what this is? Like, awakening experiences. I hadn't yet heard of anything like this happening. And the clearest answer I got was from the philosophy forum. And it was like a Satori moment, which is like a brief moment of enlightenment in which the veil of reality is lifted for a moment and you can kind of see a much greater reality.
Right.
And that sent me down a path that just completely opened my mind. And yeah. And here we are today talking about spirituality with a cool being.
That is unreal, dude. Like I've heard, I've read books and heard accounts of people having shared experiences, but I think I've met some people who have, but it's rare that I actually come across people who have had shared experiences. So when you first went into this light, like how, from your perspective of time, how long did it seem to last?
I would say I was in there from my perspective, like a few hours.
Okay. Yeah.
From actual time perspective, it was probably like a minute.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the way it usually is. Yeah.
I mean, and it'd be interesting to see from the outside of we're just like standing there, just like staring into space because we weren't talking at the time. But yeah, it felt like lifetimes of experience.
Right.
But it was probably about a minute or so.
And your friend, like he described it the same way. Like he said that it was just like a ton of light. Like everything you guys spoke about, it was kind of like you experienced the same way. Did he have any differences? Was there anything different about his experience at all?
His experience, I guess it differed from his perspective,
Mhm.
and he wouldn't want to call it God
Mm.
because it was just a bad word in his mind.
Right.
But he was so excited about what this was that he became evangelical about sharing this experience with
No way, dude.
everyone that he
Oh,
met.
that's amazing. Are you still friends with this guy now?
I am, yeah. Yeah.
So what is his take on everything now? I imagine you don't consider himself an atheist anymore.
Well, he kind of went in and out
Mhm.
of like believing in this greater reality to not. And every time I'd see him, I'd be like, "You remember, right? Like, we were there.
That was real. That was real.
Yeah."
Yeah.
And he's always like, "Yeah." But I actually haven't talked to him recently. Like we're still homies, but we just
Right.
haven't chatted in quite some time.
Mhm.
I would like to talk to him and just get like his full rundown on his
Yeah.
experience of it.
Mhm.
Because for me, it just completely it changed everything. Like I started a different business because of it.
Mhm.
You know, like I wanted people to have this experience because
First.
I believe the catalyst of this experience was conversation.
Mm.
And it was through the fear. I think the fear was very important, the fear of death, which is why right now is such an important time because a lot of collectively we're experiencing this fear of death, this fear of this virus, this pandemic.
Mhm.
And it can be a catalyst for a lot of awakening experiences. And realizing that awakenings can happen through just a simple conversation, I started an online platform for people to talk about interesting things and for people to listen to interesting things.
Right.
And yeah, I went pretty heavy down that
Right.
path.
So what platform is that? Like what exactly, how does that work?
This was shortly after the experience. So it was a few years ago. And basically it was people could have conversations, like these live conversations, and anyone could tune into the conversation as it's happening.
Okay.
And based on how many people are tuning into the conversation, the algorithm would lift it up so you can kind of see which ones are most interesting to listen to throughout the whole platform. Kind of like a real-time podcasting sort of conversational network.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Is it still running today?
No, it ran for about 2 years, and it wasn't. I didn't figure out the whole making money thing. Built this amazing platform.
Yeah.
I shared it with. There was a conference called TechCrunch 50, which was like the largest tech conference like in the world for launching startups. And if you've seen the movie or the TV show Silicon Valley,
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I've seen it on that. Yeah.
Yeah. He that was like the conference that he presented at. And he was at TechCrunch Disrupt, which was the same thing. They just kind of switched branding a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
But I got accepted to be one of the 50 companies to launch on stage in front of like thousands of people. And so I launched this idea, and yeah, it was all for helping people awaken. And some really cool things happened in terms of the conversations that were on it. Like it was around the time of Arab Spring when a lot of the Middle Eastern countries started like fall, a lot of civil wars. Okay. And so I'd get people on from all the different countries to talk about what was going on from their perspective.
Right.
And it was like an earthquake in Japan. That people were like chatting like as it was happening, like some fascinating things. But yeah, never really fully got in gear to become wildly popular, and didn't make enough money to be sustainable. So I ended up just kind of moving on and continuing on to do new things.
So how many years ago was that initial experience?
The initial experience is about 9 years ago or so.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you've been at this for a while.
Yeah. And yeah, the path since then has just been wild.
Yeah, I bet. And I think I heard you say in one of your podcasts that you're 37?
Yes, 37.
Never would have guessed that, man. Honestly, when I first encountered you, I thought you were younger than me.
How old are
I'm
you?
31.
31, nice. Yeah. I get that a lot, that I don't look my age. I think it's just, I'm not a huge fan of stress, so I think that it's good just to live a carefree life. And
yeah, dude.
The whole 9 to 5 thing, like, honestly, I can't, I tried it for like a month, and because I'm born and raised in LA, and it was at this like recording studio, and I just like couldn't do it. Like wake up, go to a job for like 8 hours, leave, just do that over and over. And so I've always done my own thing in life.
Very cool.
Started a bunch of different businesses and stuff. So yeah.
So where did your work take you after that? After you basically moved away from that platform?
After that, I created some apps with a friend, and all different sorts of things, still to like connect people, but just on different sorts of levels. Worked on a project that was it utilizes the low energy Bluetooth that's in everyone's cell phone. It's essentially sends a signal out that's like 30 feet or so, and it was pretty cool. It would connect everyone within that close proximity. So you could, it was like kind of a way to exchange contact information. Like if you're all at a party, everyone's saved there, and then you open the app and you can see everyone.
Oh, okay.
So I've always just kind of been really interested in connecting people socially. And there's something about the internet that is just, as a 37-year-old, like I was like, right when I was a little kid, I had a computer. Like when I was in like first grade, there was no internet.
Right.
And then around like third or fourth grade, like we started to be able to connect online.
Yeah.
Just before like the commercial internet, there was like BBSs, which was like super ghetto. Like you essentially create your own internet. So your telephone line becomes like a hub, and people can call into your telephone.
Okay. Right.
And then from there, you can like chat with people who call your house.
Yeah.
Which then America Online essentially became that house, but they bought tons of numbers so everyone could all call in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, really fascinating how the internet came about. And I was there to like witness this whole like birth of the internet. And it excited me quite a bit. I was just like absolutely blown away.
I bet.
Going to a private school at the time. And so I would always go online to have people who lived in France help me with my French homework.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, it was quite nice. But I believe that I chose this time. I chose this time to be alive to experience this amazing shift in humanity that's happening right now.
Agreed. Yeah, man, it's quite incredible, isn't it?
It's it's amazing.
Yeah. So before we go deep into stuff like that, what did you do any I guess training, or did you kind of teach yourself how to like code and all that, or where did you go to school for it? Or
I taught myself everything. Taught myself how to code. When I was a little kid, probably like 9 years old or so, I was like a computer hacker. Because at the time, in order to get online, you had to pay $10 an hour to be on the internet.
Wow.
It like literally cost $10 an hour, like $14 an hour in the beginning. And so my brother and I would go online like real quick and like try to do everything we wanted, and chat real fast, and then sign off. But we wanted to just be online 24/7. We wanted to be online all the time. And so I started to learn how to just like chatting people. I'm like, how can I be online more often? And there was this whole like hacker community in the beginning, and I found ways to get online for free. and that lasted for quite some time. And then download software and like learn software, and I really taught myself everything. And I was a computer hacker as a kid, and then eventually I realized that you can actually like make money on the internet. This can be like a business. I started to make websites for people, and I had a little group of friends who we all made websites and like used Photoshop and stuff, so we all helped each other. But yeah, I didn't go to school for any of it. I think school is necessary for some people, but I wasn't a huge fan of it. And so, I went to like a junior college, took like a business class and just dropped out.
Right.
I just couldn't do the school thing. Like I couldn't do the whole 9 to 5 thing.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I started a business that just like blew up. It just took off, and it was selling Nintendo controller belt buckles.
Cool.
Yeah, which basically for people who are listening, I had a old school Nintendo controllers, which was like the square, boxy,
Yeah.
Mario Brothers, Zelda,
Right.
really cool, like black, gray, and red, white controller. I took those and I gutted it out and attached a belt buckle piece to the back of it and turned it into a belt buckle.
Very cool.
And I posted it on a bunch of different message boards, and it started to gain traction. Like people started to reach out to me, like, "Oh, hey, this is like, we want to interview you." And then next thing I knew, I was like in Wired magazine and FHM, EGM, Nintendo Power. Like,
wow, dude.
Yeah, like it just went around. And once, if you have any sort of product, if you have anything that is featured in like FHM, for example, which is like a men's magazine, everyone, like, if you get featured in something that's like relatively big, you get so many people reaching out to you to get interviewed, to be in this magazine, to do it's like, it's really fascinating to experience virality. And it was like maybe viral for like a couple years.
Right.
And then like Hot Topic made their like replica, like metal version of it and started selling that. And
so you were literally the first, or were you the first person to actually ever do that? Because I seen those belt buckles. Like I had friends who had that belt buckle.
Yeah.
That's unreal, dude. That's so cool. Wow.
It was
pretty neat.
It was fun. It was, turned like my whole family was like helping me construct them in the living room while like Christmas time. And like eventually I found a source that actually had replicas that looked exactly like a Nintendo controller, but it was just like a replica.
Right.
So I just dropped out of school and just pursued that, and then just continued to do my own thing for till now, till 37.
Right. So what is that? What you've been doing for your like main work since then? Is like
well, it's actually changed so much. So I did that for about like 2.5 years. And as that trend kind of went down, my buddy and I, we started a clothing company called Nerdy Shirts. And we just made like really silly slogans on t-shirts. And from there, we grew it from like my closet to, we got an office, and then eventually we got a warehouse, and we hired all of our friends to help ship and manage customer support. And we grew that for a few years. And then, and then after that, we sold that company, and then started doing apps and stuff, had my awakening experience, like that shifted everything. And so right now what I'm doing is I help spiritual teachers make money. So I work with a lot of different spiritual teachers who have like meditations and things like that. And I help them market their meditations, run their online companies, and all that. That's kind of like what I do now on a daily basis, which I just love. It's so much fun.
Amazing, man. That's good work.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I might have to take advantage of some of that at some point. I'm starting to get myself into the market, so to speak, because like you actually mentioned, you were talking about with one of your podcast guests, like the idea of spirituality and money is kind of puts a bad taste in most people's mouth. But, and it was for me as well. Like I basically resisted making any money from anything I was doing for the past 7 years. So like 7 years ago was when I had my quote awakening experience. Since then, all I want to do is share what I know with the world. But I was very reluctant to make any money in it. But now my logic is, this is the only thing I want to do. So if it's the only thing I want to do, then I got to make money somehow. So
and money's energy. Money can be used for good.
Right. Exactly.
Cool. Well, I'm curious. What was your spiritual, or what was your awakening experience like?
Well, I guess I had two really. Well, there was two really significant events that kind of changed everything. And one of which was probably the first major one. I was in a relationship at the time, and I realized in many ways I wasn't happy in it. I was trying my best to be like the best boyfriend I could be. And this was new to me because I basically avoided relationships most of my life. But I thought it might make me happy if I give it my all. So I did so, but I started to feel this kind of separation between me and my true self, because I was basically being someone else to make someone else happy all the time. And it like made me somewhat schizophrenic. Like I had a battle going on in my mind 24/7, and it kind of separated in many different ways. It wasn't just me versus another aspect of me. It was like a bunch of different voices. And if I wasn't aware that they were all an aspect of me, then I would have drove myself crazy. So at the time, I was also writing a book. Like I just got the idea to write a book. I just started writing a fiction. And that kind of made me really dive deep because I was analyzing, I was trying to get to know my character. So I was like, in order to know how my character acts, I need to know absolutely everything about him. So the more I tried to know more about him, it automatically started making me analyze myself more.
Hmm.
And then, so anyways, around this time, it was around 2013 that I ended up going on a trip with my girlfriend. We went to a wedding of one of her family members, I believe. We drove a few hours away from where I live. And at this time, I was reading a book called Red Dragon. Have you ever heard of it? It's like the Silence of the Lambs series.
No, I have not.
So are you familiar with Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah.
Okay, so Red Dragon.
I watched the movie.
Right. So Red Dragon is the first of the series.
Okay.
And it's essentially about this guy who is a serial killer. And the reason why he is like that essentially is because he grew up in group homes and foster homes, and his mother was super abusive. The times that he did live with her, like she basically tortured him. So I could see how he could progress into this type of person. And so I was reading this book at the time that we went on this trip. We went to this other town. We stayed at somebody's house. And when I was in this house, I found their bookshelf. And in their bookshelf, I was just picking through it and seeing what was interesting to me. And I found a book that was written by a guy who was actually from the city I was living in at the time. Well, I still live there now. It's called St. John's. And anyways, I realized I read the back and I was like, this is interesting. It's by a guy from St. John's. So I read the back, and the premise was so similar to Red Dragon. It was kind of mind blowing to me. The only difference was that this guy wasn't a serial killer, but he grew up in foster homes. He had a very abusive mother. Like the parallels were a little bit mind blowing to me. So I picked it up, and it was only like 100 pages. So, and we didn't have much to do there all day. So I basically just went through the whole thing, read it in like a day and a half. And the similarities between both books were so mind blowing to me that I just started to realize that, everything we are is dependent upon our circumstances. Like it's not like anybody is born inherently bad or inherently good. We all are formed into who we are. So, and the reason why I kind of seen this is because in the Red Dragon book, the guy grew up with no one. Like he only had his mother at some points, and she was terrible to him. And then he lived in foster homes where everybody was terrible to him. But in the real life, like account that was written by the guy who lived in St. John's, he talked about how he always had his brother with him. So no matter what group home or foster home they went to, he was always making sure that his brother was okay. He was always protecting him. So he had this type of like love in his life, and he felt like he had this purpose to make sure his brother was okay. So I realized like the only reason why one guy went down the dark path and the other guy went down the light path is because this guy had love and this guy didn't. So I just kind of clicked to me. I was like, man, everything is because of our circumstances. And I kind of understood that a little bit intuitively anyways, but it just really solidified it. And then I just started seeing things in myself. I was like, so why am I the way I am? Why do I have this hatred within me? Why do I have this need to have people like me so much? Why do I want cool friends and, like people who are respected and admired? Like I was always associating myself with other people rather than having any confidence in myself. All my confidence came from how cool my friends were, or that I knew some celebrities or some nonsense like that. So on the drive back to St. John's the next day, I was in the car and I was still reading Red Dragon. And this whole time, like I just basically stopped reading it because I couldn't stop thinking about all these things. And in those moments, I just was going through my mind and encountering everything that I believed about myself. I was like, why do I believe I suck? Basically, why do I believe that I'm no good or I'm not worthy? I was like, where's that coming from? Why do I believe that? So I just started asking these questions, and it wasn't even like a decision to do so. It was kind of like just a process that I couldn't stop. And all the things that I realized that were wrong in my mind were just based on lies of some kind, something that I ended up believing when I was a kid because of some emotional reaction. And then I was able to let those things go. And then I can actually remember on the drive home, I got a text message from a friend of mine who was like somewhat of a new friend. I've known him for years, but we started hanging out more, and I've always admired him, thought he was really cool. I always had a lot of respect for him. I always wanted him to be my friend. So when he was texting me being like, hey man, let's hang out, I was like, holy shit, he wants to be my friend. This is so cool. And then I was like, why do I care so much? Like, why does it matter to me? Like, sure, he's a great guy, but why do I derive so much of my identity from how he thinks about me? And then that kind of just triggered it. I was like, man, who cares? Like, just let it
Hmm.
go. And I was like, all right, I don't need to, like, I'll still hang out with him. I'll still be his friend, but I don't care anymore of whether or not he respects me. I don't care that I can say he's my friend. That none of it mattered to me anymore. And then I've like with that kind of mentality, I started to truly feel free. I was like, I'm okay with me. Like I don't need to have anyone. Like me is good. Like I just want to be. I just like and I remember being in my relationship with my girlfriend and just she'd always want to do something, go do a couple things and stuff like that. I was like, why can't we just be? Like, why can't we just enjoy each other's presence? Why isn't that enough for you? You know what I mean? Because I started to realize like all I wanted to do was just be and enjoy living.
Hmm.
And then so when all that happened, it kind of just became a lot more solidified in my mind that I all I need to do is just be. If anything ever upsets me, I just come back and sit with my own mind and I can think about it and logically deduce exactly what caused that uh, emotional reaction. And then I can just transcend it and then I let it go. And I just gained this skill and it got better and better over the days. So the next few months, it was just constantly like my brain was never stopping, just sifting through all the dirt in my mind. I mean, like, why is this here? Why is that here? Letting it go, letting it go, letting it go, just dropping everything to the point where I just basically dropped my own identity. I stopped identifying as my own name. Like I didn't really care. I was like, I'm not Mike. I'm not a male. I'm not this body. Like these are just transitory things. What I truly am is just this energy that fuels me. So this kind of mentality was becoming very deeply ingrained in my mind. And then a few months later, I had a psychedelic experience with some friends. And since that mentality was already there, that psychedelic experience basically shattered open the door to let me feel the truth of it. Because before I was like, yeah, I'm free. This is so much better. I'm good. Like I was feeling better and better every day. But when I had the psychedelic experience, it was like everything I was attached to, even like my own thoughts, or like that was probably the point where I started shedding the last bits of my identity. And that's when I truly felt like I was the entire universe. And I felt that connection. I was like, I'm not limited by my body. I'm connected to the air around me. I'm connected to this earth. I'm connected to this galaxy. Everything is me. And it's not everything is Mike. It's just that everything is all the same. And I remember just having to separate myself from my friends. We were all in my friend's living room listening to music, and the music was hitting me so profoundly because I had no boundaries left. It wasn't like Mike was experiencing the music. It wasn't like, "Ooh, I like this. This is good." There was no judgment. There was no, "Yeah, I like this experience." It was just like the music was hitting me and I was vibrating from it. I was just like, "Oh my God, this is nuts." Like the drums were hitting me and making me feel all these things. The music, like the high pitched, was like making me feel lifted, and it was just overwhelming for me. And I was like, "This is amazing." I was just filled with so much ecstasy. It was unreal. And then my friends were just sitting on the couch beside me, like enjoying themselves. But I just felt like I, I feel like, in a sense, being around other people is hindering me from really going further. So I was like, I just got up off the couch, went into my friend's room, lied down on the bed, and just let it happen. And then it all just started to unfold. And I was just basically sitting, lying there, experiencing all these feelings and thoughts, and just knowing that I was connected to everything. And I no longer felt attached to who I was before. And then at that point, I was always kind of like leading up to that, since I had those experiences before, I was trying to make sense of it. So I was always kind of like writing down things, always taking note of what I was experiencing. And so I had this tiny little composition book about that big in my pocket with a pen. And I just took it out and like I just kind of wrote without any me involved. I just wrote what came to me. And all I wrote was stop favoring sensation over wonder. Because I found that every time I would go into this wonder state where I'm like, ooh, I wonder what that is. Then I would get an answer. I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. And then I would chase that answer around and be like, ooh, give me more beauty. Give me more beauty. But then if I just let go of that answer, then another one will come. Then another one will come. And I was just like, don't attach to any of them. Just let yourself be in the space of infinite knowledge and it will continue to come. You don't have to grab onto anything and be like, I want that knowledge. I want that. So I told myself to stop favoring the sensation of the feeling and just be in the state of wonder. Because when I fell back into the state of wonder, that's where I truly felt connected to everything. So that kind of really, that whole mentality kind of permeated throughout my existence after that. And then then every day afterwards was even more profoundly just letting things go and learning new things about me, letting things go. I would interact with people in my life and they were like, man, you have changed. I'm like, yes, I have. Like, you know, it's very nice. Yeah. I'm free now. I'm free now. And, you know, it was just like for the next like 6 months after that, every day I was perpetually in this state of just contentment or bliss or whatever you want to call it. But then, you know, like after a while, I kind of just, it wasn't that it got worse. It was just like I decided that I want to bring people there. I want people to come with me there. I want to have friends to play with in this infinite space. So I, in a sense, allowed my consciousness to come down a couple levels so I could still use my speech. Because when I was in that infinite space, I never had words, never had thoughts. It was just, yeah, this rules, essentially. So after a while, I just kind of, I wanted to share this knowledge with people. So I got good at describing what it was. They're like, so what are you talking about? Well, we're all infinite energy. Like you look at, you know, even atoms, even protons, neutrons, they're all made up of energy. It's just vibrating energy in a field. So we're all that same thing. You got to understand that. And so I started basically telling everybody this in my life. And some people were like, yeah, that's not for me. But some people were like, that's really cool. Tell me more. But then over time, over the past 7 years of doing this, it feels like my life has improved insanely. And then everybody around me, their life has gotten better as well. It's just like everybody, it seems like everybody in the world is awakening now. Like it, obviously you're aware of that too, that we're going through this massive shift of awakening because like you said, we're all facing our own mortality now. And that fear, that's a big part of what I experienced is that when I was on the couch and feeling that music hit me and the things I was letting go, one of the things I had to let go is my own life. I'm like, one day I will die. So imagine what it will be like when you're facing death's door. And then I felt that fear. I was like, holy crap, man, this is an intense feeling. But I'm like, just be with it. Don't deny it. Just accept it. And when I accepted that intense feeling, I was like, okay, but from this perspective, it doesn't look like this is going to be the end. But even so, even if it was, I would be happy with that because now I'm free. Even if I were to go to my deathbed at that point and I would have been perfectly okay with it, even if the case was that my life would be over and there'd be no more experience after that. Because at that point, I was so happy with who I was and what I was doing that I was ready to end it all. But then the more I looked into the answers, I was like, so what does happen after death? What made most sense to me when I thought about it was that it continues on. This awareness is infinite. There's no end to this. It's just you move through different forms. So that's essentially what happened. And, you know, ever since then, I've been just adapting to my surroundings and trying to find the best ways to share this knowledge, but also in a loving way. So it's not scary to people because, well, you know, you got to face that fear at some point, but I don't want to push people away from ever looking into it. I want to be like, hey, look, these are interesting subjects. Let's explore it together. And I'm here with you if you get too scared, but at some point you are going to have to face your own fear on your own. So,
Yeah.
you know,
there's so many with that, like, everyone awakens when they're meant to awaken in their own timeline of awakening. You know, it's like I have tried very hard to force people to see a greater truth, and it doesn't register. It just doesn't even. It's like, I mean, but I get it. I completely get it. I remember a few years before I started going down my awakening experience, my friend's mom was like, I got hypnotized and I saw all my past lives and my son was my husband in that life. And I was like, that is so weird. Like that first of all, like no sense to me. Like you're a weirdo. And I wasn't ready, you know?
Yeah, exactly, man.
But then I started to go down my path and it's like our brain is made up of tunnels, you know? And like, if we don't have the proper tunnels, then we're not going to get there. But tunnels can be created, these neural pathways can be created by thinking something over and over, or like in your example, like you as a friend is speaking of something and you're hearing your friend speak of it. It's creating those tunnels, those pathways. And then when that friend leaves, those tunnels are still there and your mind kind of mulls them over and thinks about them. And it continues to create all these pathways. And then like this other friend who's totally unrelated says the same thing about life and existence, and all of a sudden that reactivates a pathway, but like with an added bonus of like, I'm a different person with and I respect you in a different sort of way, and that like connects tunnels, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, maybe it all is true.
Maybe there is some truth to this. Yeah. And it's interesting because one of the things I found after this experience was that the truth had been everywhere my whole life. It was always everywhere. Like the example I always use, and it's just a simple one, but like when you're growing up in school and you'll see posters in your school that says something like "Be all you can be," or like you can accomplish anything. I used to look at that stuff when I was a kid and be like, "That's nonsense. Like I can't be." LeBron James. It's just not going to happen, So like my attitude was just like, this is bullshit. It's just what people try to tell you to encourage you to, become part of what they want you to be, kind of thing. I don't know. So like, I never believed in any of those things. And then, the stuff like hearing like, oh, we're all one, or we're all the light. I just thought it was like a fancy way of saying we should be nice to each other. But I never thought it was factually true that we are literally all one thing experiencing itself in an infinity of different ways,
Yeah.
So
and even with that, like you can say that, like we can say that, like we are all one. And it's like, okay, like you and I get it. We get it. But even then, like it's tough for me to feel and to really experience what that actually truly means. And it's like when that feeling comes, it's like adding knowledge with emotion creates something where all of a sudden it becomes very real. Like last night I was having an experience that was like, okay, I was sitting there, I think in bed or so. I was like about to fall asleep, and I was thinking like, why does existence even exist in the first place? And I was just diving into that, and there was something about that. It was nighttime and I was like about to fall asleep. My mind was really open and I started to feel the sensation of, it's almost a fear. It's like looking at the Grand Canyon. Have you been to the Grand Canyon?
No, I haven't.
It's like you see it in pictures. It's really cool. But then when you get there in person, it's like, wow, like you feel it.
I bet, man. Yeah.
And I started to feel the emotions that come along with the vastness of, why does existence exist? Like what created me? What created God? How does this all exist? And like, if it exists, like if this is real in some sort of way, which it is happening. So on some level, even if it's a simulation, it's real.
Right.
What created the creator of the simulation? Like just going down that mindset is just like the added emotion to it. I think there's something really magical about connecting emotion with knowledge. Like we are all one. We are a single consciousness experiencing this, but like to really like grasp that and feel it, there's just some magic behind there.
There really is. It's a totally different experience entirely. Like it's beyond any emotion I had experienced in my life leading up to that. To know, to really feel that connection with all things and to know that it's infinite like, I understand where that fear comes from, because that fear is kind of like, it's there and it starts to build and you start to feel that building, but that's your personal identity or your egoic self perceiving that build. And you're like, what is this? What's going on? Something's changing. I don't like it. What's this feeling? And then you resist it because you realize that everything you are is about to be shattered into pieces.
Yeah. A bit of an ego death is coming.
Exactly.
It's like for me, where I was raised Christian, were you raised any specific religion or any?
No. My mom was somewhat a believer. She always said stuff like, I believe there's something greater than us, but she never went to church. I'd been to one church service in my life, and that was with my nan. My dad was pretty much an atheist. He told me God was bunko when I was 11 years old. So, I've always been very skeptical. I basically had an agnostic point of view up until about 25.
Yeah. And so there's that ego death. Like growing up Christian, I had always been programmed that this is what you believe. Otherwise, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to spend eternity in a fiery depth of destruction, which is its own form of fear in itself. But there was some ego death in that there was a lot of comfort in believing something infinite, and religion. All religions, there's so much truth in them. There's like even Jesus himself, he's a super cool guy, like an enlightened being, kind of like you and I, like who are awake. He was fully awakened, and he was connected on a very really cool level. And he's just like, hey guys, we should love each other, and then they just kill him because he's too radical.
Yeah.
But there's so much truth in it. But I had to go through a lot of ego death of this is the way and all other ways are wrong. All that stuff I had to shed, which all that's super toxic. But people collectively, as we're going through this ego death on a global scale, like all these fears are coming up, and this pandemic has really shifted our mentality into I could possibly die if I go outside and talk with someone who's not wearing a mask. And like right now in the US, it's very interesting because we're having all these like riots. Like my friend was posting on his Instagram live yesterday back in LA, and he was literally in the street filming, and there was like cars on fire in the middle of the road, two cop cars just on fire, and everyone's running around them like chanting. I'm like, dang, this is a much different energy than like a month ago when everyone wouldn't even leave their home.
Yeah.
Now everyone's leaving their home and they're like burning buildings and cars and like rioting. And, there's a lot of energy, and it all stemmed from the black guy who was killed by a cop because the cop was like kneeling on him, and which was absolutely terrible. And that sparked a lot of like activism in a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And plus 3 months of being inside and not going outside, everyone's like ready for this revolution.
Right.
And so it's just some fascinating energies, and, it's an interesting time. And a lot of the people that I've been interviewing on my podcast, I've got a podcast called Deep Shift, which very similar to yours, where we talk about really interesting, fun stuff about the world transforming. And a lot of the guests who come on, some of them channel, some of them are just intuitive, psychic, whatnot. And there have been a lot of similar stories and kind of premonitions of many more of these shifting events happening on this planet. Like this is just the beginning, because we essentially need to wring out the old world, which is racism, which is the selfish mentality. Like, I need to make as much money as possible, and therefore I win. And we got to squeegee that out and get this new earth mentality in, which is we are all in this together. We are all one. So if you are me and I am all other beings, including this homeless guy, we all need to take care of each other, because we're taking care of ourselves in another dimension, another, perspective of time and space. And so, we are collectively stepping into this new earth. And this pandemic was a huge wake-up call and a huge shift in the direction that we're heading.
Yeah.
And some other ones, there's other potential realities, other potential future timelines, because the future is not written, but it's written many, 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 many different ways. So it's like you get to choose which future we want,
right,
based on how we act. Like, for example, with the pandemic, this could have been much, much, much worse than it was, but we did do a pretty good job of like chilling inside and like letting it cool out a little bit. Other potential future realities are ET contact, where the higher intelligent beings who are stages above humanity, who are watching us right now. Like they're watching Earth and with popcorn in their and
exactly.
And they're not showing themselves on a mass scale because people aren't quite ready for that. They shoot their guns into the air or whatever. Like, not quite ready, but eventually, within our lifetimes, I believe they will show themselves. Another event is the solar flare that a lot of people are talking about, which is it's electromagnetic flare that comes and disrupts all technology, which would also kind of jolt society. And then apart from that, just like financial collapses, government collapses,
Right.
all different sorts of the ways in which they are, which are super corrupt and funnel money to the top 0.01%.
Yeah.
That needs to change for sure. So, how does that happen? Because the people up there are not going to volunteer for it to happen.
No, of course not. No, they like where they are for the most part. Well, at least they think they do. They're not aware of the love they could experience, man.
And every now and then you do get those enlightened millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's more and more coming out all the time, man.
Yeah, exactly. There really are. And I love like Silicon Valley. I think Jack Dorsey, who runs the CEO of Twitter, I think he's an enlightened being. And he's super into meditation, and he's just like, yeah, Twitter employees, they can stay home forever. Like you don't have to come to work at all. Like I think he's enlightened. Some people have a different perspective of him, but I think he's a cool guy. Cool. Yeah.
I don't know much about him, but I watched maybe not all of it, but I watched some of his interview on the Joe Rogan podcast. And yeah, he just seems very level-headed. Like he seems like he is wanting to do good with his company, but all the other people that are running it with him are like, no, Jack, you can't do that. That's the way it comes off to me, but I could be wrong. But I want to go a lot deeper into all these different things. Like this is something I want to talk about, but I do have one question for you, because I'm really curious before we go into that realm. When you had that experience, I think you said it was last night, or, when you were wondering, like, why does this existence exist? You never said whether or not you came to any answers.
No, didn't come to any answers.
I figured so.
I think that it's relatively incomprehensible to the water brain that we have. Like our brains are literally just like water and electricity. Like it's like if you took your brain out, it would be the consistency of Jello.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
You could like drop it in the ground, it would just splash. Like we are very physical creatures, limited by the physics of our physicality. And I don't quite think that our minds can fully comprehend it. Like that's where like emotions do come in, like to feel the expanse of it. But I think the basic way to describe it is there exists an existence that's outside of time and space where it makes sense that something just is a constant that just is.
Yes.
Yeah. The isness is certainly, I spent a lot of time learning and researching, meditating on, the observer behind the eyes and really tuning into how to enlighten oneself to become present by becoming the awareness. And people can have like if you're listening to this right now and you want to experience an awakening, just close your eyes and focus on the awareness that's aware of the physical sensations, and continue to go as deep as you can into the awareness that is aware of being in a body, the awareness that's aware of life, the awareness, and you just keep going inside of that awareness, and that starts to like almost like break up the stuff that's been solidified of like, this is reality. This is, we watch TV, we go to work, it starts to open that up, and those emotions come in. Like it's like, I don't even know if we have words for all of the emotions, but it's like a fear / excitement, which is like, I don't know, this is kind of scary. Like this is big. Like, I don't know. And that's a good feeling. That means that you're about to experience something that your body's preparing yourself to experience something courageous. You're going somewhere that's new and exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why I ask is because obviously I've dealt with that question myself. And the only thing I ever came to was just that there isn't a why. There doesn't exist a why. There's no, because why implies cause, implies there was creator. But then every time you come back to there was a creator, then there's always the question, who created that creator? It's an infinite cycle. So you can't have a why in an infinite cycle. And the reason why I see our brains not being able to comprehend it is because we comprehend that which we can put into a box, into a system. Like, this is the way it is. This causes this. This causes this. We see the system. But see, the thing is that this infinity that we are a part of that exists forever, it cannot be described and boxed up it's literally by its very nature goes beyond all boxes. It's just an energy that is. So you can't be like, this is how it works. Like you can describe its characteristics, but you can't say this is how it starts and this is how it ends. You can say this universe started with a big bang, but there was big crunch before that. And there's constantly universes existing all the time. And time, like you said, time is not an actual thing. It's more, it's just from our perspective. We experience time because for us, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. But then there's higher beings that can literally see our whole life in an instant. So from their perspective, there's no time in our world, but they still experience time as well. But they can go in and out of our time. They can come and go to 1945 and then go to 2059 instantly. So they can perceive our time as timeless, but they're like, today I went to 1945. And then right after that, I went to 2059. So from their perspective, they're still experiencing time as well, but they understand even their time from a higher perspective can be perceived as timeless as well.
Yeah, this like fifth dimensional perspective of, after all, we are just a bunch of animals making noises out of our mouth.
Yeah, exactly right.
And we're trying to use these noises that are coming out of our mouth to describe something infinite, something impossible in this reality. Mm-hmm. And it's like you could describe why this reality exists because Source God was just curious, just wanted to create. Like, I think by nature, the nature of existence and reality is creation and creativity. Mm-hmm. And why not experience the experience of separateness?
Yeah, exactly. Because when you are one thing, you don't experience yourself. You just are. Yeah.
You just are. And so how fun would it be to be born, to wake up without any idea that you are God, that you are Source, that you are all one thing, and you feel like you're separate, and then you get to play this game of many, many, many lifetimes, slowly figuring it all out.
Yeah, exactly. Then you go back to the infinite for, well, there's no amount of time because it always exists. It's like the infinity is just like this infinite vibration that is outside everything that is physical, and then it comes into the physical to power it, and then you experience it. But then once you realize it within the physical, you vibrate higher and go back to the infinite. And when you're in the infinite, you're like, there is no time. There's no end to this. But then you're like, I want to experience again. I want to go back to being a human or a body of some kind so I can forget. And there's just this infinite cycle of remembering and forgetting and remembering and forgetting. And
the infinite is like a jacuzzi.
Yeah.
Like you just kind of like, you chill in it and you don't really, it just feels nice to just be.
It really does. Exactly. Right. But even after being in a jacuzzi for a while, you're like, I want to go for a run, or
I'm feeling kind of pruny right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And nothing is like, when you're aware of that infinite space, nothing is ever considered bad or good. It's just, I just want different. I want different now. Not because what I'm experiencing is bad. You just want to feel something new. It's like you said, it's all about creation. It's all about doing something that you've never done before. And when you have the ability to take on a human form and forget everything you've ever done, then everything is new from your perspective. So it's just like this magical cycle of constantly being able to forget who you are. So then you can then again remember. And it just goes forever.
Which is why this moment in human history is so exciting, because we are at that precipice of a majority of human beings remembering.
Yeah.
And I think the great awakening is just simply going to be that we recognize on a mass scale that we have multiple lives, that we are infinite beings. And once all of us recognize that on a majority scale, everything shifts. Like you create the new earth. We recognize we're all one. We recognize we have to help each other. We can build, we can spread the resources out and create like a really, really incredible society. Yeah. But as of right now, if you asked 20 people, the majority are not going to say that.
Yeah.
The majority will either say, I don't know, or they'll just speak what their ideology told them.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's as simple as that. But then again, it's not simple because you can't just tell people that this is what the truth.
Exactly.
They have to experience it and feel it themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to have the experience. Oftentimes when I tell people what I see to be the truth, they'll be like, that sounds really nice. I hope it's that way, but I don't see it that way. I'm like, yeah, I get why you don't, but someday you will. Maybe not in
Yeah.
this lifetime even, but someday it will happen. Yeah. Mhm. So I'm curious now, like, I want to know what you think of, I guess, everything that's going on. And I also just want to know what you think is our origin story, essentially, because listening to your podcast, you've had a lot of different points of views, but you, like you said, there's a lot of parallels. Like I listened to, was it Elizabeth April? And I listened to Harper. What was his first name? The guy from Unification. Anyways, he, both of them had much to say that was very parallel. And I was just wondering, with all that you've researched, with all that you read, with all the people you've interviewed,
Yeah.
if you were to put a bet on exactly how we got here and like what our origin story is, how would you tell that story? It's a big ask, but
it's a great question. Yeah, it's a pretty huge answer, but I would summarize it by humans are an experiment, and right now we are all eyes are on Earth, meaning all the like higher intelligent beings are watching this experiment as something that's really never happened before. So it's said amongst many channelings that this is the first time a mass awakening on the scale of like 7 billion people has happened. And
in what terms? Like in our galaxy, or in our solar system, in our galaxy cluster, in our universe?
In this universe.
Oh, wow.
In this universe, this is an unprecedented event of an awakening on this level. Generally, it's like, you know, we've had Native American tribes who have awakened. They went through the mass awakening, but you know, there's like 200 of them.
Right.
Or maybe you have a planet that has like a few million people.
Right.
But to have 7 billion people all be going through this awakening experience, and it's almost like there is we're in this grand experiment of like, it's almost like a fragile experiment, because we are these enlightened beings who have modified DNA to not be enlightened. And we have this potentiality for awareness of this enlightened point of view, but most of us are sleepwalking on this planet. So we're like right at the middle of this like really cool, flexible area where we can go any which way we want. And our DNA has been modified by the gardeners who are taking care of this beautiful earth.
Right.
We have been, over time, we have been like assisted to get to this point of human existence where we're at, while also living in a portion of the galaxy, of the universe, where free will exists. And we have the ability to shift our point of view. I don't know. It's something that like it's like how we got here. It's the question is so vast and big.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically we were seeded by an extraterrestrial intelligence, an extraterrestrial race, and our DNA has been modified significantly over the past few hundreds of thousands of years. We are how we got here. Like you and I, probably not even really human souls. Like we're some sort of higher extraterrestrial alien being who chose to come here from maybe another dimension. Most people who like have this purpose, like I want to change the planet, are not like Earth souls. That there are souls that came from other portions of the galaxy or other dimensions who came down to assist in Earth's awakening at this moment. So it's like, you know, where did you and I come from?
Yeah.
You know, I've yet to get a past life regression session. I don't know my soul's past, but I definitely know that I'm not native to this planet.
Right.
Just because at a young age, my mind has been so far out with this desire to like help heal the planet that it feels as though I'm here on a mission from some other realm, some other place, some other experience. Right. Yeah.
I'm curious, like, if this is an experiment, what is the purpose of the experiment? What are they trying to find out?
That in itself is even multifaceted, because there's many experiments going on, and there's also multiple different races that are meddling with the experiment, and there's other governing agencies that are keeping us safe from meddling,
right?
And everything really happens for the expansion of consciousness, and the energy behind the human race is similar to the energy behind, as humans, we want to create, we want to, you know, what can we possibly do? Like what can we invent to make this more interesting? What can we, like, it's that curiosity energy that is creating the human experience to into existence. And it's like for example, like the human experience wasn't meant to be one of like turmoil and trouble and difficulty and disease. Like it was meant to be more of like a paradise where you come here and it's like a vacation. It's legit. Like it's nice. And because of DNA shifts that happen, now all of a sudden disease and fears and all that can come in. And you know, there's societies that exist outside of this planet that fear is not an emotion that exists.
Right. Yeah.
Fear, if they knew of fear, it would just, their reality would crumble. Like it's just so low frequency that they're just up there, just enjoying everything.
Right.
And that's kind of like what we were meant to experience, but you know, things shifted, and now it's like we're in this point of view where all eyes are on us. Like, are they actually going to do it? Like, with this DNA that's been like suppressed, like, are they really going to have this mass awakening? Yeah, and from this higher perspective, it's like this is all a game. This is all a simulation, and we all get to pick our characters. Like for example, with this police officer who was kneeling on this guy's neck, who ended up killing him.
Yeah.
Some soul chose that police officer's character. He was like, yeah, I'll play that role.
Yeah.
Like the most hated person, at least in the US, like right now, is that guy.
Yeah.
And he chose to be this hated character.
Yeah.
And because by playing that role, he is helping humanity see the racism and all that's kind of tucked away. You know, he's helping it, bring it to light so we can heal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough perspective, but
yeah. My thought was like, yeah, some people are not going to swallow that for sure. But yeah, it's true. Like we all choose to play these roles. We all are here to play certain roles, and his purpose, so to speak, like you said, was to basically shed a light on how messed up it is and how messed up it can continue to be if we don't make change. So by, you know, playing that role, now people all over the country are being like, we demand change. It has to stop. So like things like this, like tragic events of any kind, as tragic as they are, they serve a purpose, because without it, we're not aware of how bad it can be. Like if we just heard stories, or if something as tragic as like the Holocaust never happened, we might not know, we might not believe that humans had that capacity for that intense amount of evil. But when we see it and it's within our recent history, everyone's like, yeah, we got to do whatever it takes to get away from that. If we didn't have that, then it might be easier for fascism to come back in and rule again, because we're like, oh, these guys with these ideas, they make some sense, so let's believe them. But since we know what fascism looks like, we can be like, no, this kind of sounds like Nazism, so maybe we should be wary of these people, because we have the knowledge now. You got to have the knowledge of what can happen in order to ascend to, a higher state of being where those things don't happen. We have to be aware of the dark so we can ascend to the light. That's the only real way we can have the light, is if we know there's this other side of the coin.
Yeah, and that's kind of this awakened perspective of not seeing something as good or bad, kind of stepping out and seeing like it is all necessary. There's the higher perspective.
Yeah.
While always holding our moral compass and this is what's right. Being of service to others is where we should head, but being in kind of a non-judgmental space while also embracing the divine masculine, which is like, you gotta, discipline when necessary and put
great boundaries, structures. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought of when I was hearing your explanation, and I was actually thinking about it when I was listening to your talk with Elizabeth, and it might be a question that she might be able to answer, but I'm just curious if you have an opinion on it. She said something along the lines of, yes, we are an experiment. Yes, other terrestrial beings came here and basically created us by splicing our DNA with some of theirs. Now, I've heard different takes on, I'm not really educated on all those different theories, so I'm not sure which one she refers to. But the idea of some extraterrestrial race coming here, splicing their DNA with, I guess, great apes of some kind to create us, their initial purpose was to make us intelligent enough that we could do complex work, but not intelligent enough that we'll fight for our own freedom. So we were basically created as a slave race. But then I've heard other theories that, beings come here to just wake us up by giving us their DNA so we can see who we truly are. And the plan was to make sure that we actually become enlightened. So, but one thing that she said that really stuck out to me was that she said, we wouldn't be at this level of consciousness if they never did that, if they never interfered. So that makes me think, like, if us being at this level of consciousness requires some sort of intervention from a higher state of being, for a higher being in general, then how did they get to that high state of being? Did somebody interfere with their DNA and that's what created them? Is there a mechanism built into nature that just after you get so complex of an organism, it just becomes self-aware? Or does it require the intervention from another being in order to actually create it?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. And I've actually wondered that myself. I love channeled material. Like the majority of books that I read right now are channeled. I think it's more pure than some guy's opinion,
Right, exactly.
And there's been a lot of material about Earth and the DNA and how we came about, and this, us essentially being slaves for this higher intelligent race that wants to mine the gold on the planet for their resources or whatever.
Right.
But there isn't a lot of information that I've seen of who was the first intelligence
right
in this universe. Like that's quite fascinating. What was the very first one that just emerged from the ground?
Right.
Kind of like what the majority of humans believe humans to be, which is like, we're the only intelligence in this universe because we're the only, but what is the story of that first race of beings that came about from the mud of some planet?
Right, exactly. Like, this universe is allegedly 14.8 billion years old. So at some point during that time, some carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen atoms mixed together and created life, and then it became intelligent over millennia and millions of years, and then it became self-aware. And then I guess they were the first ones to be like, hey, we're self-aware now. And then they became enlightened beings, created what is equivalent to spaceships and said, let's go around to star systems and enlighten other beings. And maybe there's the two, maybe there's plenty of races out there that kind of emerged and evolved by themselves and just kind of, even just eating the plants. Like there's the stoned ape theory. You ever hear that by Terence McKenna? Yeah. We came down into the trees as chimpanzees, and then we just started eating the mushrooms on the ground, and we're like, oh my God, something's going on here, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's like a common thing. But then for those planets that didn't do that themselves, maybe some other races that's how they evolved came to their planet and we're like, let's wake up these monkeys. They haven't eaten the mushrooms yet, so they haven't figured it out. So let's just go down and splice our DNA with them so they're more capable of understanding what they see when they do eat the mushrooms or something like that. It's hard to say, but I would assume, like my guess would be that there's both. There's races that emerged from the mud and just became self-aware. And then there's races that had some sort of intervention from higher races. And it's just this ongoing cycle that happens throughout the entire existence of the universe. And then the universe, eventually, all the stars burn out. They go to, just a bunch of black holes form. They become one big black hole, and then it crunches down into a singularity, and then it starts all over again.
Yeah.
I guess that's what seems most plausible to me anyways.
Yeah. And then that's this perspective of like being in a kind of a 3D, 4D, 5D universe. Where it's like that happens, but then you step outside of that and there's other dimensions.
Right.
There's other like spirit realms. Like where do you go when you die? In that sort of realm that exists like kind of a bit outside of this physical perspective.
Right.
So it's like even within like the very first beings that emerge from the mud and the universe, like there's still the like angelic realms. There's still the other beings, or like even source energy, like God energy that exists that could be communicated with on a certain level. I kind of feel like the first ones would be quite pure in their intelligence and their consciousness. Like they would just emerge quite enlightened.
Right.
But yeah, and even like on this planet, we evolved to need to like eat, to need to like eat some sort of something in order to gain sustenance. And that involved eating other us, like eating other beings. And anytime you need to kill something that's alive to eat it, it means that something could potentially kill you. And that in itself creates all kinds of karma that's not that cool. But if you have beings that are emerging from the mud, who just being in the sun is all they need, and all existence on that planet, all they need is just to chill in the sun and get that. All of a sudden, you don't have the element of killing, and even like the thought of killing something to put it in your body is like probably really weird.
Exactly.
And like unheard of, it just absolutely unheard of. But yeah, it's really fascinating. It'd be actually a lot of fun to interview some like channels and ask them what, like you and I, we have these podcasts, we love talking about this deep stuff. And it's something I've thought of a bunch, but like we have the ability to ask questions to non-human entities.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
Like we could literally interview an alien if so we chose. And it actually would be cool too to like do some collaborative work with you, like more like even like getting like a third person on and like having these like three-way discussions with people.
Yeah.
Just because I think all of us like conscious people, we should all collaborate together and like all
most definitely
this tribe of like light and essentially people who want to make the world a better place.
I couldn't agree more, man. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. And it's like we can ask these sources, and I mean you can ask multiple sources the same question and kind of see where all the similarities lie. And like that was what helped in my awakening after my like crazy experience. Was I started to read every book, Dolores Cannon, like a lot of the different channel materials. Dr. Michael Newton, materials where people were put into like past life regression hypnotherapy or some kind of hypnotherapy where their super conscious was able to speak through them. And when you get thousands of people, whether they're atheist, Christian, Muslim, like you name it, Buddhist, like if you put them under and they all say like, yeah, when you die, your soul floats above, you can see yourself, you go into this realm in which you can review your life. You can then choose your next life. You can choose your parents. You then go into a new body, and then you experience life, your soul's growth. Like if thousands of people all say like literally that same thing, in my mind, I start to go, okay, this pattern means that there is truth behind this. And it's like a scientific method where you know,
of course, you
experiment multiple times and you get the same result.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so much of that. There's so many, like, I read a book years ago about near-death experiences. And everybody who came back said very similar things. And they came from all walks of life, many of whom had never even known what a near-death experience was or had any recollection or heard of anybody's experiences like that. But they all come back saying the same type of things. You know, like I went into a room, like it was just an infinite room of bright white light. I felt the presence of God or whatever they called it in particular. And, you know, a lot of people talk about how their loved ones were there. And they're like, you know, this is where you're going to end up. This is where you're headed, but you're not ready to come yet. But it is up to you. You can stay here with us, but you also have that life on earth and you got children there, or, you know, you got work to do. So it's up to you. Do you want to stay here with us, or do you want to go back and do your work? And the people that come back to life are the people that go back to do their work. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, this hallucination or a creation of the brain, but there are many cases where people have these experiences, and from the moment they leave their body, they're brain dead. Like there's no registering on the machine. They're monitoring their brain and there's no brain activity whatsoever. And they're gone for a couple minutes and then they come back and they'll even say something like, I was floating in the room and I seen you guys trying to revive me. And you said this. And many doctors have said, you know, I've had patients that told me what I said while they were brain dead. Like, so how could they hallucinate and concoct this happening while they were brain dead? If they're not experiencing anything, if their brain's showing no activity whatsoever, how could they have heard what I said? And then there's instances where people have traveled throughout the hospital, so to speak, and they'll come back and be like, hey, doctor, I heard you say this. And he's like, I wasn't even in the room with you when I said that. How did you know I said that? I was like, well, I was flying around, you know, nothing to it, you know? So when you look for the evidence, there is a multitude of evidence. It's insane, but
there's so much. Yeah. And it's like, we live in a time right now where that is not the mainstream point of view. And we're going to look back on this time as kind of the dark ages. Humanity just didn't get it. We just, as a collective, we didn't get it. Like, and it's, we're stepping into getting it. Like, you get it, you know, I get it. Like, all of my friends that I surround myself, like, we all understand the greater reality and the greater existence of this experience. And sometimes, because I do put myself in a bubble quite often of like everyone who just like understands it on a higher level. Sometimes when I step outside of that and I'm talking to like my friends from high school, or, you know, old friends, or like just other people, it's like, I realize that most people are just very confused. Most people don't get it. A lot of people are just super depressed. Like, they're just like very pessimistic about this reality. And like, they don't see that higher perspective. And I'm like, oh man, there's quite a bit of room to grow. I was on a road trip and I was going through Oklahoma here. And every time I went to a different city, I would go to the bar, grab a drink, and just kind of feel the vibe of the area. And there, you know, there's not a lot of like higher conscious groups or like meditation studios in like Oklahoma, you know. And so I was talking to this woman, I was chatting with her in the bar, and I mentioned past life regression hypnotherapy, just kind of brought it up in conversation. And she goes, whoa, you can't talk about that here. And I was like, whoa, really? Do you even know what it is? But yeah, it was so outside of what was like normal or accepted, that it was just not even allowed to like she's like, people can't hear you talk about that. Like they'll get upset or something. I was like, damn.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Now.
There's still a lot of resistance to those types of ideas, man. And to the point, like there's so many people that are so resistant to it that they are offended by the very idea of it because it challenges what they think they know. Right.
And, I get it. I mean, it's like my friend's mom who was talking about past lives before I understood it. Like people just kind of sound crazy. Like
I get it.
Like I thought she was just kind of cuckoo,
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I was too. I believed everybody who didn't like believe wholeheartedly in what science says was stupid. Like,
oh yeah, that's a huge one too. Yeah.
I just was like, yeah, if it's not proven or if it's not stated by using the scientific method the way standard academia says it's supposed to be done, then it's not real. And so I never even considered it. I just dismissed it all, like reincarnation, I dismissed. I was like, well, I don't remember what it was like before I was born. So obviously there's nothing after death. And that was my mentality. Right. Yeah. And it just made sense to me. It just logically made sense. But then when I went into the realm where I could see what happens before and after you live this life, it was just like, well, there's something else going on here. But yeah, it is, like we said, it is changing all the time. There's so many people coming to these ideas that have never even considered them before because it was just like, but when you face that fear, you got to find something. You're forced to find some sort of salvation because you can't deal with that anxiety of knowing that you could be nothing at some point and that is the end of you. And if you aren't living your life the best way possible, if you aren't being who your true self to be, then you are going to have some trepidation when it comes to the idea of ending this life. Because you'll be like, well, I'll never get to do this. I'll never get to do that. I'll never become that. I'll never achieve that. And that scares the living shit out of people, as it did myself as well, right? There were certain things I wanted to be known as, or there's certain things I wanted to achieve for myself. And when I started to consider the idea that I might not, it really scared me. But then when I found the truth of all things, I was just like, yeah, as long as I stay true to myself and be loving to the people in my life, I don't care when I go, because I'll know that I had a good time here. And, and I just get it's kind of like just an extra bonus, like a reward, that the fact that I get to keep going after this, like I said, I was okay with the idea of it being the absolute end because I still had the mentality of I'm doing what I can here and I'm okay with that ending when it comes. But then when I look further, I realized that the possibility of the end seems kind of ridiculous to me now. There's no end to it because that implies a beginning. And then what started that beginning? And just the concept of infinity in general is a hard one to grasp because you literally can't box it up, because the second you put it in a box, it becomes infinite. So you can't put your mind around it.
Yeah, because our human mind thinks infinite is like infinite time, but time doesn't actually exist in infinity. So it's outside of even that realm of thinking.
Yeah. So I get why that sounds nuts.
I love what I love about this awakening journey and about understanding a higher perspective about like life and death is that we're all going to experience death at some point amongst the people around us. I'm sure you've experienced it. I've experienced it. I've had friends who passed on, and having this higher perspective has been so beneficial in recognizing that their soul actually chose to leave at that time. Yeah. And I just, it's like, I shed some really beautiful tears and just like released a lot of that sad energy of like, wow, like this person was here for that time and how awesome. Like I loved them, and just like kind of like releasing the attachment to them, like needing to be here, and then recognizing that they're on another journey right now. Like, and then you can then tune in. Like whenever someone passes, I always like sit in meditation and tune into their soul and just have a conversation with them. Because everyone who passes on, they will travel to everyone they knew in this life and loved in this life, and kind of like are present with them. And if you're receptive to that, they're like, that the soul's like, wait, what? Like you get it, and they gravitate towards that. And I like to share, if they were someone who didn't really fully grasp like a higher perspective of existence. I just share all the knowledge that I currently know of, like, enjoy, like, you get to choose, you get to do all this stuff. Like, you can float around if you want, you can go wherever you want, you can travel through time, you can, like, just kind of like guiding them with my own mind and just send them all the love that I can.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And I've had some really, really awesome experiences with that, like, just with the idea of them still being around. And Dr. Michael Newton, who regressed thousands of people and has a lot of information about souls who just passed on, says that if you're grieving too hard, the spirit wants to visit you, like, wants to, like, wrap you in love. And people get the tingles sometimes when, like, someone passes on. Like, that is the soul, like, essentially there with you, like, trying to communicate.
Yeah.
But if one is grieving too hard, which grieving too hard is actually selfish. It's more about oneself than about the life of that person.
Yeah.
They can't get through. They can't get in to even comfort you if you're grieving too hard. So it's important to recognize, if there is sadness, to just cry and release it and, like, breathe into, like, the idea of this greater expansion. But yeah, like, they want to hang, and they want to communicate. They want to say, like, it's all good, like, you do you, I'm gonna go do me.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to add to that concept is that people, when it's like, I had a really, like, best friend. We were, like, best friends growing up since we were, like, little kids, and he passed on maybe, like, 3 years ago. And this higher perspective, I realized that there's a good chance that he was already born again into a new baby body. I don't think he was some ascended master who just, like, moved on to another realm. Like, I think he probably came back.
Right.
And if that's the case, we are going to exist again within this reality, but he's going to be in a different body. And that concept is pretty exciting, because I could be, like, a 50-year-old, and there's, like, this 20-year-old who's like, what up? Like,
remember me?
Yeah. And maybe I hire him, like, to work in a company. I, like, have this, like, feeling, like, I just feel like we know each other, like that reality exists.
Yeah.
And how exciting is that?
I know. Yeah. The possibilities are endless, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very cool to consider those things. I know exactly what you mean about having that higher perspective when you're encountering something like that, because it like you said, when you allow your emotions to do what they need to do for you, then you can grieve properly. You can let go. And then by letting go, you are allowing that soul to do whatever is necessary for them. And it's not like if you're grieving hard and you're, like, attracting them into your life because they want you to feel good and be able to heal from it. It's not like you're holding them back. That's what they choose to do. They could very well say, no, screw you, I'm going to go be in the light. But everybody, every soul has free will. So even when your loved one dies, they might hang around you because you're having a hard time. And even if you can't accept them, and every time you say that they embrace you, you feel that tingle, but then you're like, no, what was that? That was a ghost, leave me alone. And you kind of neglect it and you don't want it. Then they'll, like, put signs up every now and then. Like, you'll be driving down the road and you'll see something that reminds them. You'll be like, hey, look, I'm here. And then the more they do it, eventually you'll start to be like, maybe there is something going on here. And then you open your mind a little bit. And then eventually be like, maybe I should talk to a psychic. And then he's like, finally, I've been trying to contact you for years. Finally you picked up the phone. Like, yes, I'm okay. Everything's great. I love you. All is well. You need to let go of me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to leave you. It's just that you let go of me for yourself so you can truly heal. You don't need me in your life to be happy. I'm always here in essence. So you can move past it. And I like what you said about how everybody makes that choice, like on a soul scale, like beyond the ego, everything is a choice. Like, the soul is making the choice to live, to die, to do everything, to experience the most tragic things, to experience the most joyful things. It's all part of that soul contract, so to speak. And I recognize a very profound, I guess, piece of evidence towards this when my own father passed, because we were in the room. He was lying on the bed. He was unconscious for the last like day of his life. And my dad was a very proud man, and he didn't like when people got upset about stupid things, and well, even not stupid things, but still. Anyways, there was like 10 of us in the room with him. And then we were there like all day long. And then at about 11 o'clock at night, everyone's like, all right, guys, we got to go home. We can't stay here forever. So my mom left, most of my uncles and my aunts left. It was just me and my uncle and my aunt and my dad's best friend who stayed. And then about 5 minutes after everybody left, that's when my dad chose to leave. And I was just like, yeah, this is clearly like he didn't want everybody to be around like bawling and crying and being all sad in the moment. He wanted to do it on his own, right?
Nice.
So, yeah, it was unreal to see that. Like, so like 5 minutes after he left, his breathing started to get shallow. So then I was like, got on the phone, I was like, Mom, you got to come back. Called my sister, you got to come back. And then, but like, to me, that was him saying like, I didn't want to do it all around you because you guys will get too choked up, like, freak out, So yeah, I see that. And I hear that kind of thing all the time, that there's so many instances of people being like, yeah, when we were in the room, he was still there, but then the second everybody left, he chose to leave. Yeah, it happens all the time. So there's something deeper, there's something greater, there's a higher intelligence that is beyond his body, that is aware and connected to our intelligences as well. And then when we all choose to go and be away from it a little bit, then they can be like, all right, now is my time to go. Everybody's gone. I can do this peacefully, and nobody's going to be yelling and shaking me to come back or something like that,
Yeah. I don't want you to call a nurse in to shock me back to life.
Exactly right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the life, death, like it's such a human thing. And it's, like I say, like a human thing, because like we are at that point in evolution where we don't quite like fully grasp it and fully know it. We're like the higher beings, like the fifth, sixth dimensional beings and beyond. Death doesn't really exist. It's more like you're in this body, and then if you want to like go into that other body, you just will it so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then your spirit, your soul just moves on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just a transformation of form,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this body's getting old and decrepit. It's hard to move it. I've been in it for a couple thousand years. So I'm gonna drop this one, get on into another one, go do some work on some other planet, some other galaxy or whatever,
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Hey, can we pause this recording so I can go to the restroom real quick?
Sure thing, man. Yeah. All right, cool. So, one thing I want to ask you is just that ever since this awakening experience of yours, I would imagine that your intention is to remain in a higher state of consciousness. So I'm curious as to ways in which you do that. How do you remain there? How do you improve your life? How do you develop yourself in ways? What are some of your cheat codes or life hacks that allow you to remain in a higher state of consciousness?
This is the kind of stuff I love talking about.
Cool.
I love evolution. I love personal evolution. It's one of my passions in life. And so I'll share a little bit of my journey and something I'm doing right now that is really cool that I'm like developing at this current moment. But so I grew up, I was super shy and, couldn't talk to girls, couldn't like, I didn't use my voice at all. And, I recognized that I wanted to evolve. And so what I did was I looked for things in my area that were any sort of like transformational experiences. And so I did, and this is something I highly recommend for other people to do, which is go to like a transformational workshop. If you feel like you have stuff from the past, or you want to like evolve or grow or expand your beingness, do like transformational one that's all around the planet. If you're a man, is the Mankind Project. They have this new warrior training weekend, which is super dope. Just like the most powerful men that I've ever experienced, all just like raising each other up. And their philosophy is like the new warrior, the new masculinity is one that fully embraces what it's like to be a man, like a powerful man who like knows what he wants, you know, and like leads with his like staff, you know, but is also fully in touch with his emotions.
Right.
And he helps other men and other people all be fully attached to their emotions and fully embrace their emotions. That was totally transformational to me, and things like that. I did mastery and transformational training in LA. These really cool transformational workshops. So I just wanted to share that because those things really helped me like step up a little bit higher up. But what I'm working on right now is this whole process of journaling on a daily and a weekly level. So I'll just like guide you through my process because right now I'm developing it. And I'm going to be teaching it at some point soon. Okay. It's really helped shift my life. And so basically what I do is every night I have what I call my study. So you have your area that is dedicated to this. You just make like mine's like this little desk next to my bed, and I have a little light. I turn all the lights off except for that light on the desk, you know, salt lamp. So it's like every night I go there. I have 2 journals. One journal is a journal that I draw my day. So at the end of the day, I'll think, okay, what were my big accomplishments for the day? And then I'll draw them like nice pictures of what happened. I'll date it. And I have all my significant moments in that journal. And then the next journal just next to it is my tomorrow journal. So I'll sit in meditation for a moment and I'll think, how can I have the best day possible tomorrow? And I'll write on the right side column, I'll just list out everything that like, how cool would it be if I learned how to dance, you know, how cool would it be if I did this and then. And then on the left side, I take everything from the right side and I add a time next to it. Like, okay, the first thing I do when I wake up, I'm going to do yoga. And I just signed up for this online yoga thing. I'm going to do that. After that, I'm going to do my dance lesson. After that, my work. After that, I'm going to work on this thing that I've like always kind of put off, but like actually I really want to do it. And so I put that there. And then I rip that sheet out and I put it on the top of my desk. And so every morning when I wake up, I grab that sheet and I know exactly what I'm going to do each day. And as I do each thing, I check it off. And then in the evening is then the review. So I have that on a daily basis. And every Sunday, I have my week review where I go back and I look at all the pictures that I drew of the whole week and I review all of my accomplishments. I think it's so important to like pat ourselves on the back and say like, you did a great job. Like, look at all the things that you accomplished. It's so easy for us to get lost and like, oh, I could have done better. Especially perfectionist in life. But to really celebrate your accomplishments throughout the week and like see how much you did each week on this like visual, like picture, you know, picture based. And some days I'm distracted. So I draw like cloud, you know, it's like this distraction cloud, just so I know that day I was distracted. All the pages of like what I want to accomplish each day, I tape to my wall. So I see the full week of everything that I wanted to accomplish, the things that I didn't get to accomplish. I then have this like overview. I can like see my week on a pretty clear level, and I can see what worked. I can see what didn't work. I can see what I wanted to accomplish. I can see what I did and didn't accomplish. And I get this like really clear picture. And then what I do is I take my notebook and I write myself a note for 1 week from today, for next Sunday. Okay. I will say like, you know, let's say it was a tough week and I was distracted. I'm like, man, Michael, like today was super tough. I didn't get everything that I wanted to get done this week. And I kind of feel like it was because this and this and this. I hope that this next week is better. And then you start to say like, here are the things that would be amazing to accomplish this next week. Like how cool would it be if you could, you know, finish that garden that you started and have all those plants just growing in your garden. And so I write that letter and I fold it up, and then on it, I write open on Sunday and I pin it to my wall. So the whole week I'm seeing this letter that's pinned to the wall closed. And after I do my whole week review, I then open that letter and I read it. And it's my past self communicating with my present self. And that system, this is going to be the third week that I've done it. Every single day I journaled, and it's actually a lot of fun. Like each night to like go and like review the day. I think it's a lot of fun. But it's helped me realize what works, what doesn't. Like for example, I've noticed through the patterns that I've recognized from all of these sheets that if I start my day dancing, it usually turns out to be a pretty good day.
Yeah, I bet, man.
For whatever reason, the movement in the body, especially if I learn a new dance move, and like I'm a really like terrible dancer. Like I've always been that like awkward middle school kid who like refused to dance and like watched people and said like I hate dancing. But the truth is that I just didn't know how to dance, and I didn't have any rhythm, and I didn't want to look silly. And so I downloaded a dance course, like dance for beginners. Here's how to dance. And I realized that learning a single move that feels super awkward to me, I'm like, I can't even step into that beat. But then if I just do it over and over and over and get into the rhythm, it activates something within my like energy body that like I feel so like accomplished and confident and like groovy, just like, like, I'm feeling good about life and like I can dance whenever I want. And so that's specific for me, but I kind of feel like a lot of other people may help move energy well. So that's something that I'm super duper stoked about, and I'm going to teach it eventually once like maybe the fourth week is done because I'm still refining it. But I'll have that on probably my Deep Shift Instagram account, which is @DeepShift, and so that's one thing that I'm super excited about right now that I love sharing.
Right on, man. Very cool. So I assume you have like a regular like meditation practice as well?
Yes. Meditation is also it's something that I'm experimenting with because I think meditation is a little bit different than what people think it is. Like a lot of people have the idea that meditation is you close your eyes and you quiet your mind. Well, it kind of is that. I think that meditation can be more active. And so I will use meditation to visualize my next day. And kind of deeper than that, I think that meditation opens our mind up to get downloads from our future self and our higher self. So like we already exist in the future. We already have many potential future timelines that our consciousness exists in. And we can actually communicate with that future self. And that future self can send information back through time to us. And that's actually what Nostradamus did when Nostradamus, who was like the world famous prophesizer who has books and books and books of prophecies, which are essentially potential future timelines.
Right.
What he was describing, a lot of the prophecies came true and a lot of them didn't come true. And it's because not all timelines that he tuned into were the ones that we collectively chose as humanity. But Dolores Cannon, she has really interesting books on Nostradamus, and I think it's 3 books. But she also has a video on YouTube. If you search Dolores Cannon Nostradamus, she talks for like an hour about her experience with Nostradamus, and it's one of the most interesting stories I've ever heard. And just to kind of summarize what it is. Nostradamus, he would look into a black mirror, like maybe obsidian or something, some black piece of stone, and he would gaze into it, just essentially staring at his reflection, and eventually he'd start to see visions. So Dolores Cannon, she's a past life regression hypnotherapist. She hypnotizes people. They go back into their past lives, and she hypnotized someone at some point. And they go into this past life, and they're like, I'm like a teenager in this room, and she's like, okay, describe the room, because she has them describe where they are, what the setting is, who is the current leader of their realm, of their place at the time, which helps her decide where in time they are, you know, who the king or queen or president is.
Okay, I see.
And so this person goes, yeah, I'm in a room. I'm in a room with this guy. I'm his assistant. And she asks, you know, who is this guy? And it turns out that the guy in the room is Nostradamus. And she's like, damn, like that's crazy. No, really? You know, let me ask you more questions about this guy you're with. And all of a sudden, the person who's regressed, who's this like teenager who's his assistant, goes, oh, he wants to speak with you right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's like, okay. Because normally it's almost like this third party perspective where like when she regresses someone, they're floating above they're experiencing their life, but they're kind of floating above it and they can describe it.
Yeah.
It's never like interactive like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But Nostradamus, he would enter these hypnotic states on his own.
Right.
And what he would do is by entering that hypnotic state, he would travel into the future. And he was able to communicate with Dolores Cannon. And, you know, she goes, okay, I'll talk with you. And he says, okay, this channel has been opened and we'll be able to reconnect at any point. And she goes, okay, you know, like, all right, you know, and so the person who she hypnotized, they had to like travel somewhere, or, you know, they had their own life. And she finally found someone else who she regressed. And when she regressed this random other person, instantly Nostradamus came through that other person, this other channel. And so she established this connection with him. And she has all these books where essentially she goes over like all of his prophecies and all of this like information and everything that he talks about. But the reason why I brought that up was because we can do that exact same thing. Meditation, like why I say it's like more than just like quieting your mind, is like we literally, between our ears is a portal, and we can travel through time and space, and we can communicate with our loved ones who've passed. We can communicate with ourselves in the future. And yeah, those moments in time where we like all of a sudden like have this like thought or voice in our mind, like that can be coming from other dimensions, other times, other spaces. So yeah, meditation is something that is really, really fun to play with. And anyone who's listening right now who wants to play with it, what I recommend doing is, you know, finding a quiet place, sitting, closing your eyes, breathing for a little bit, and then asking yourself questions. And as you ask yourself questions, just allow the first answer to come in. And as that first answer, ask a follow-up question. And you can have like this dialogue with yourself that becomes very significant. And I've had dialogues with myself, like, honestly, I don't know who I was communicating with, whether it was my higher self, my future self, the Pleiadians, like who knows? But I was getting such good information from my life that it like literally transformed like the direction that my life was headed. And just to add on to that, one more thing is journaling. So you can like journal meditate, where you just start typing. And this actually has helped me quite a bit. Every now and then I get in this state of being that's like almost like depressed or like flustered, frustrated, distracted, where I just want to like go in the kitchen and like literally eat everything, you know, like just eat like a gallon of ice cream because I'm so like, I don't know what to do. What should I, you know, have you been in those states of where it's just, yeah, it's like where you just like, you're just so like, yeah. And that can like turn into depression. It can turn into addictive tendencies. It can turn into like, I just want to smoke weed and just chill, you know, all these things. And weed, which I'm totally cool. I think marijuana is a wonderful thing. Obviously with anything like ice cream, it can be abused, but it's
of course. Yeah.
And in those moments of total flustered mind, for me, I like to type. So I open up a document, blank document, and I will literally just pound the keyboard. Blah, 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 just like HG, FG, ASD, ASD. Like
I have done the same thing plenty times. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
Keep doing that, and I'll be like cursing, even just like, you know, just and just like releasing the energy,
Yeah.
allowing the energy to release, to like almost like my mind is like a little bit like tired and like more open. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm so confused. Like I just share like very vulnerably what's going on with me. Like I just feel so like sad or depressed. I don't even know why I feel sad. I just do. I started just saying all these things, and all of a sudden, like my language becomes clearer and clearer and clearer until I'm like, I start typing questions for myself. Like, what do I actually want? And even I'm like, I don't know what I actually want. I want to just like feel good. I'm like, what would help you feel good? I'm like, sometimes like going on walks makes you feel good. Like, well, you could potentially go on a walk, I'm like,
Yeah.
Maybe I will. All right. And I have like way too many of these documents where it's just like a lot, like total chaos to like beauty, like pure, like best friend beauty.
Yeah.
That have just given me so much guidance. So that's another really amazing tool that people who are tuned in can utilize.
Yeah. And if you're open, I just out of pure interest, I would love to read one of those documents just to see the evolution from chaos to order. It'd be really cool. Because I've written quite a few myself. I don't write as much as I used to, but it used to be a really regular practice for me. And basically I would just write just to write. It would be basically that. I wouldn't have anything in mind about what I was going to write about. Because to me, at first 7 years ago, all I wanted to do was write a book. I was like, I'm just going to put the truth out there and just, I'm not even going to put my name on it. I'm just going to get it online and promote it somehow. And then I didn't want any recognition because I still wanted my anonymity. I was like, if this like gets big, I want to be able to not be accosted by all kinds of different people. So I basically just like, I would still write all the time trying to write this book. But every time I did, like, I found it difficult to make it structured because I found that the biggest truth and the most true things came out when I was in a higher state of consciousness. So I would get myself in that state, and then it would just be the most simplest explanation. Like, okay, so what's the truth here, Mike? And I would write, we're all one. And that's it. I'd be like, all right, I'm done. I'm like, that's not a book. You can't make a book out of that. You need something more. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But like, so it was always kind of difficult for me to structure everything I believe into one essay type form. So I started making it a regular practice to just write for the sake of writing. I was like, I'm not trying to share anything here. I'm just going to sit down. And often what I would do is I would just sit down and I would write, what is true right now? And then I'd be like, well, I'm sitting down and I'm typing. Well, why are you typing? Oh, well, I want to write something. Well, so why do you want? I'm like, what is it you want? What do you desire? Why are you not happy with this moment? And I would just have this conversation back and forth with myself through type. And there have been multiple times where this got so, I don't know, like I would just completely step outside of myself and I'd just be there typing and I wouldn't even be thinking. There was no thought. It was just straight down through the crown, out through my fingers, and I was just like, this is like a channeling process. And it was amazing. And like a lot of the things that I would do, a lot of the things I wrote in that kind of state would be the most true things I've ever written. But there are also other times where I would go to write and I would have absolutely nothing to say. And I would just start. Well, the thing was that I was trying to get, to me, it was like the practice of typing itself. I was like, the better I am at typing, the faster I can write these words when they come to me. Because if I don't practice typing, then when I go to write, we are all one, we are all connected, it'll be like WEARE. You know what I mean? Like I got to perfect this skill. So I remember this one document I made years ago where it was just like, have you ever heard that sentence that uses all the letters in the alphabet? It's like,
oh yeah, like the
quick brown fox. So I wrote that like a billion times. It's just quick brown fox jumped over, whatever. Wrote it over and over and over again to get used to hitting every single key. And then after that, every time I typed, every time I did like that kind of session, everything would come out a lot faster and a lot more clear. But yeah, that whole experience of just writing what is true, I made that a regular practice. And I remember, I think it was 2017 or 18. Every now and then I just get in these spurts. I was like, okay, what can I do to keep myself in a higher state of consciousness? And I'll kind of design a program for myself. I don't often stick to it for more than like a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but even in that time, I'll always benefit from that time that I do it. And one of the things I did was to write every day for a full month. I was like, no matter what you write, you're going to sit down in front of your computer for at least a half an hour and you're going to write no matter what. And a lot of that out of that month was nonsense. But when I went through it all, I found so much wisdom that like just came through me. And I just started I'd take bits and pieces of all of it and just try to find what was best out of, like, it's like, you're sifting through sand to find gold kind of thing, So yeah, I found that as a very helpful practice as well. And I do have multiple documents myself of where I'm just typing nonsense, and it's just hilarious to me to go back and read those things. They're like, that was a funny day,
Yeah. And it like literally, yeah, it literally is channeling. Like, some people channel extraterrestrial race through just typing it out. So it's like, there's so much magic there. And I love how you were talking about how you like ask a question and then ask a follow-up question and just keep asking that follow-up question, and without even pause, just write the answer, the follow-up. There's magic in that. There's definitely some just beauty.
It truly is. Yeah. Have you, I'm curious, like, I want to learn, I want to like branch out and find more of these because, I've read a few channel texts myself, but not a whole lot, I suppose. And I've heard about Dolores Cannon so many times over the past couple of months that I feel like I'm compelled now to look into her, because so many of the teachers that I follow are like, yeah, Dolores Cannon. And I've never read a word of hers before.
The queen. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that. Like, she's the mother of all channeling. Like, she figured out like that. She was basically a hypnotist, right? That would, speak with people and regress them back to their past lives and other selves and stuff like that.
Yeah. She's one of the OGs. She has since passed on a few years ago. I think 17 or something like that. But yeah, she was one of the original people who brought past life regression hypnotherapy into the mass scale. Basically, in like the early days, like the 50s, 60s. She's like, I want to be a regressionist. It was pretty popular at the time to hypnotize people and bring them to their childhood and like quit smoking, or something like that.
Yeah.
Relieve their trauma from their abusive dad or whatever. And so that's what she did. And she brought clients in. And all of a sudden, at some point, she regressed someone to their childhood, but they slipped back into a past life. And this wasn't a thing at the time. And she was like, a little bit blown away that, wait, where are you? Okay. And they're describing the scene, but the scene is like from the 1920s. And so she keeps asking them all these questions, describe the world around them and they describe it in detail. And then she realizes that she can ask them to move in time, like move to the next most significant moment in your life. And then they talk about this crazy thing that happened to them, move to the last day of your life. And they talk about them dying. And then, move beyond that. And it talks about the transition beyond dying. And so once she realized that was possible, there's a higher intelligence that allows us everything. If we overstep our bounds, even as a human race, if we do something that's too destructive for the universe, something will step in and make sure that we don't do that. Because what we do has a ripple effect outward. And so once she opened that channel, she was then allowed to, on a higher perspective, to do that with more people. And she started to regress a lot of people. And all of a sudden, she started to get a lot of people who would go into these past lives. And she did it with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And then all of a sudden, people started to slip into past lives that weren't on Earth. And not only was the idea of having multiple lives like a mind-blowing, and I mean, this is like 50s, 60s era. Like, this is not something that people talked about. Like, New Age was not a section in the library,
Yeah, exactly.
And so all of a sudden now, when she's getting people who are having lives that aren't on this planet, like that itself was like next level mind blowing. And she was allowed access to that because this higher intelligence knew that she was going to treat it like a precious gem. And she then took all these sessions, and all her books are essentially transcriptions of her regression sessions. And the books then go into past lives and into aliens, extraterrestrials. After she regresses someone, she takes them into the superconscious, which is this higher self. She can ask everything. Why did you show me that life? Why did this person exist on that planet? Why did they choose to have this Earth life? And that super conscious will answer any question, absolutely anything. And so her books are fascinating because it's not her opinion, it's not anyone's idea. It's just simply transcriptions of the regressions.
Right.
And her books were significant in my awakening of a greater understanding of the universe. And just like a real quick story about the synchronicities around that was I went to this dance party. I was in LA at the time. I was dating this girl. We had all our friends over. We all one of our friends heard about this warehouse party. It's like one of those parties where like you go to one location and there's a dude standing there who then tells you the actual location of the warehouse. It's like
that's
all
exclusive.
Warehouse. Yeah, it's super fun. Lots of like super conscious people there. And we're just like grooving, dancing all night. And I'm chatting with this guy. My girlfriend and I, we're having this awesome conversation with this one guy. And he's like, you got to like learn about crystals. Yeah, there's this kid who communicates with crystals on YouTube. He's so cool. And we're like, what? This is like early in the awakening. And he's like, and Dolores Cannon, do you know her? We're like, no. And he's like, oh, he grabs his phone. He goes on Amazon. He orders one of her books, The 3 Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth. And he sends it to my house, like gift wrapped and everything. And that was, and then he just like floated out of my life. That was just this one moment, and then like an angel, he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I finally got the book, and it took actually about a half a year to read it. I had it. I opened it. I didn't feel compelled. I had it. I opened. I took a random page. I'd read like the page. Interesting. Yeah. Put it away. All of a sudden, I kept doing that. I'd open random pages, and I'd read enough where I was like, that's actually kind of fascinating. To the point where my mind was like, the neurons all connect, and it's like, now is time to read it from the beginning. We've connected enough neural pathways where you're going to feel excitement for this.
Okay, yeah.
So that excitement came, and I started from the beginning, and I read the entire thing, and it just opened my mind up to all these possibilities of like extraterrestrial races that are communicating with the planet, and like what that actually means, and the truth behind it. Because like before that, it was like you hear about some like guy in like an AM radio station who's like crazy in his desert house who talks about aliens, and it's like kind of like one of those like crazy things, But this made it something tangible and real, and the amount of different stories that she had of people who regressed and how they talked about all the same things really opened my mind up. So if you're thinking about Dolores Cannon and checking her out, I have. And then since I've gifted this book to so many people, but I highly recommend it. It's called The 3 Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth.
Okay, I got to write that one down. Yeah. Well, I was going to lead to next, after you spoke about that, I was going to ask you, like, if you could give me like maybe 3 to 5 books that were integral in your growth.
Yeah. So definitely The 3 Waves. Is fascinating. And just to describe what that means, the 3 waves of volunteers, when she regressed all these people, you start to get these patterns again. You get these patterns of people all saying the same thing. And essentially there has been higher conscious beings who have come to Earth to help raise the frequency of this planet to get to the point where we're at now, which is the precipice of like the new Earth. And what she discovered was there was 3 waves of volunteers who volunteered to come to this planet. The first wave was like the 1920s or something. The second wave was like the hippie revolution, the 60s. And the third wave was like around like right now, where all these people are now like choosing to come, because a lot of the higher conscious beings, they won't come to this planet because it's just a messed up place. Like it's dark and scary. Like if they speak their mind and their love, they could get killed, So they're like, yeah, I'm going to choose not to come. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty terrible thing. But we've raised the frequency of the planet, and the internet has helped raise the frequency of the planet because it's spread knowledge, free information. We live in the age of Aquarius where knowledge is free. Right now, it's not about, you're not going to get killed for sharing cool stuff about aliens. It's right now it's more about entertainment. How can you entertain the masses to be interested in all the free knowledge that exists out there? And so because now we live in that age of free information, you're not going to get killed for sharing your tarot card readings.
Mm-hmm.
People are now choosing, souls who are higher conscious beings are choosing to come to this planet and share their light and their love with the world. So yeah, that's what the three waves mean with that book. But of course, the other book is Be Here Now, Ram Dass, which is just his story with psychedelics, with being a Harvard professor and getting kicked out of Harvard for doing studies with LSD with the college students there, and then traveling to India and getting a guru who was talking about like all this crazy like stuff, this telepathy. He was describing telepathy in a way that was like very real sounding, like very like the way in which he wrote the book. And the first part of the book is like, have you read Be Here Now? It's like,
I have,
yeah, beautiful, beautiful book. Like the first part is just his story. It's like, I don't even know, like maybe 40 pages or more or less. And it's so real that I started to realize like, oh, maybe all this like psychedelic crazy stuff that happens when you're not on psychedelics could actually exist.
Right.
And then of course the rest of the book is poetically, artistically trippy, and just like it opens your mind by just scrolling through the pages. Like that's where you feel the emotions by each page. It's like you feel like you're taking LSD by just reading the rest of the book.
Yeah.
That one's just so good. And then The Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle. That one is like the training wheels for people to die. That was my training wheels. I was like, okay, like you want to learn about higher consciousness. Let's talk about the present moment.
Yeah.
Against the present moment. So I highly recommend that one. I've given that one to my brother. He has yet to read it, but hopefully at some point, when
the time is right.
He'll open up and, I think that one's a great one to open people up to the higher reality. And I imagine probably most people listening to this right now have probably already read it. Yeah. But it's also just good to know for like friends and family who want to just become more conscious and more healthy mentally. It's a great starter book. I'm trying to think of what else. The Four Agreements was good. There's a lot of other books that were pretty good in my journey. I'm trying to think of other ones. Yeah, like those ones were the most significant books in my path, in my journey. Also, it's not a book. I mean, Terrence McKenna, he has many books, but before I took mushrooms for the first time, I listened to countless hours of his lectures, and that he describes a psychedelic experience with beauty.
He really does, yeah.
It's a gorgeous thing how he describes it. So yeah, that was another significant kind of path in my awakening.
Yeah, same. Around that time when I was awakening, I don't know if I discovered Terrence before or after those initial shifts in my consciousness, but I think it might have been before and after. Like I really was getting into him around that time. No, I think it was after actually, because I can picture myself first hearing about him at my own apartment, at which I had gotten after my awakening. And yeah, and just the way he spoke about things it really opened my mind to a lot of different things. Like, because that's what really like cracked my mind open to all those things that were previously considered to be mythological. He would talk about like elves and fairies and stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that you immediately have that's nonsense, that's myth, and who knows, but still it was interesting to hear a perspective that said these things are possible as well. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But yeah, his whole perspective on just the mind and the planet and how we're supposed to be living was truly like remarkable, man. I love it. Yeah,
his dimethyltryptamine, his DMT experiences, and just describing those, which now that energy kind of was transferred to Joe Rogan, who describes his DMT experiences, which helped awaken a lot of people to this like greater reality. Because I think the cool thing about psychedelics is that you could be someone who's amazingly skeptical about all of that. But if you have a powerful psychedelic experience, it's so personal and so emotional and so real that, it's like that is a pretty significant pathway to awakening. And the mushroom itself is like the spores of mushrooms can travel through space
Mm-hmm.
and not get disturbed. So one of the theories is that the mushrooms traveled from like a comet, came to the planet and, released the spores onto planet Earth so that it could be used as a tool for the awakening. The stoned ape theory.
Exactly.
Which, like, the evolution of the stoned ape theory is that there was it was consciously sent to this planet by a higher intelligent race for assistance in our human development.
Mm-hmm. So who would you say are like, I guess some of them will be similar to your book choices, but like who would be your 5 main teachers, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely Ram Dass. Ram Dass was huge. Like, I went through periods where I would listen to people and I was like hungry for knowledge, and they were like exactly the food that I was looking for. It just tasted so good. Like Ram Dass just consumed all that. He's great with like the Eastern philosophy. He kind of stops. He doesn't get into ETs and that realm, but his Eastern philosophy just so great for that initial stage of awakening. Eckhart Tolle also. I had a period where I was listening to Bentinho Massaro. He's a spiritual teacher, not as big as those other ones, but he was at the time, maybe it was like 6 years ago or so, 5-6 years ago. But he was like this 20-year-old kid on YouTube who was talking about like awakening and all this stuff. And I was just, I love the way he described it. So I listened to his stuff I had a few years of listening to that. And like what he was describing was more like the awareness, the isness, the I am consciousness, like really kind of diving into the technicalities of consciousness. His stuff is pretty out there in terms of technicalities. And that was pretty sweet. And then, Dolores Cannon, obviously, she also has talks on YouTube where it's just her speaking her stories. And I think those are amazingly enlightening. Let's see. What about right now? Right now, I am most interested in people who are channeling. So have you ever
read any Paul Selig?
I have not. No, I've heard of him through other podcasts, but I haven't read any of his books.
Yeah, it's really good too. I'm currently reading his book, The Book of Love and Creation, and I read one of his before that, and they've been really profound as well. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I love channel materials, and I find myself gravitating towards people who channel the Pleiadians. I think is potent right now. From what I've gathered, the Pleiadian, who are a higher conscious race of people, essentially ancestors of humans. They are full of love. They're full of compassion. They're full of like almost like a parental love for humans. And it seems as though they're actively helping humanity at this time. So if you search like Pleiadian channeling, there's some pretty significant. I don't have like one source that I could really recommend yet, but I've really enjoyed Pleiadian channelings. I love someone channeled I think it was Bringers of the Dawn. I forget.
Sounds familiar.
Barbara, I think her name.
I was going to say, somebody in one of your podcasts mentioned it, and I remember 5 years ago I came across her as well, Barbara, someone, and I just listened to it. Man, this is fascinating. Like it was just so cool to listen to.
Absolutely interesting. And I love, she essentially channels the Pleiadians. And what's really cool, there's some Dolores Cannon books that are really dope when she starts to channel extraterrestrials, because she's like, where are you? She finds something off from Earth. And she can then ask, okay, what is your society like on this planet? What's your governing system like? What do you look like? She can really get this very clear picture of what a society looks like from a higher extraterrestrial perspective. And typically speaking, they're not lower than Earth, they're like higher consciously. And the way in which the governments work, it's like there isn't one like governing body. It's like everyone kind of governs through a mutual understanding.
Right.
And with the Palladians, they talk about relationships and like what it means to be in a relation. Like, what are your relationships like on your alien planet?
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely beautiful what's described, and it's basically this mutual understanding of you get into a relationship. They have a couple forms of relationships. One where it's two people, monogamous, where it's two people who grow connected and they learn and grow with each other. It's pure love, and they experience life as this couple. Mm-hmm. And the moment they should like break up, mm-hmm. is brought on with so much love and understanding, because it's never a single person who's like, I want to, experience. It's always, we both recognize that our soul journeys have come to a completion with each other. And now it's time to go and explore outward. And we both have so much love for each other to like, go and do and explore and grow. Like, this has been so phenomenal. And all the love we ever had is always still going to be there.
Right.
And so they move on. And that's something that I've integrated within my own relationships and breakups, where it's like, there's that mutual love and understanding. And at least from my perspective, I try to do as much as possible. I can't control what the other person does, but quite often the other person, it's mirrored back. Mm-hmm. And then their other form of relationship is they have like groups of people, where it's like it's still a closed container, but it's multiple people. And that's like a relationship pod almost.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they kind of, experience that. But I just find it fascinating how life is on other planets.
Yeah, I know. Have you ever read or heard, because I listened to this on audiobook form. I found it really cool. Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh.
Not yet.
Oh, dude, you got to check that one out. That was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing. There's 3 books. And in the 3rd book, they talk about more other planets and higher evolved societies. And it's so amazing to hear how God describes those other societies, what it's like to be a higher evolved species. And it said something that you said earlier, like when you're that highly evolved, the idea of fear or worry just seems ridiculous to them. It just makes no sense. Like, why would you worry? Worrying is just bringing in negativity because you choose to. Why would you choose to have negativity? It makes no sense, And the whole premise behind it is wonderful. Like, I can't think of anything in the 3-book series that doesn't resonate with me. Everything seems to be completely accurate as to how I would describe reality as well.
Nice.
Definitely a good one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So aside from that, like what you were saying actually brings me into, I guess, my next question or next topic of discussion to end us off, because I think we got about a half an hour. So
marathon, love it.
I know, right? Yeah. Oh man, I could easily go for like 4 to 5 hours, but I realized last time the last podcast I did ended up being like 3 hours and 40 minutes. And when I put it into my recording program, the file was too big. Like, it couldn't handle it. It was just like, it was Ableton Live. It's like Ableton Live only goes up to like 2,047 megabytes, and your file is 2,500 megabytes. So I was like, if I cut it at 3 hours, then I know it's going to be good. So it offers me that structure, because honestly, like, I'm sure you and I could talk for days. So this whole idea is basically that, like, what is the new Earth going to be like? Like, the whole idea of what we're moving into, like the golden age, like the becoming a higher evolved state of being, a higher evolved race in general of humans. How do you envision us moving into it? And how do you envision, like, I don't even know how to structure this question, because it's we're going to evolve for the next, well, there's no end to evolution, but like, how do you see the next few years? How do you see us moving into this? What is it going to look like when we're truly a peaceful society?
It's a really cool question. And it's going to be a couple things depending on our perspective. Because for example, this whole pandemic, the perspective can be, it's terrible, it's frightening, like I'm scared and I'm full of fear and I want to watch the news to comfort me, and why is this happening to us? That is one perspective, and that's a legitimate perspective, and that is this event is a new earth event.
Mm.
And the other perspective is, I recognize that this is shaking things up so that we can, like, new sprouts can come up out of the ground. We can recognize that maybe we don't all need to travel in our cars to go to work and pollute the environment. Maybe we can use this whole internet thing to stay home and work from home and, like, be at peace with just this environment that resonates with us. Maybe like with schools, like maybe all kids aren't meant to sit there in a hard square desk and learn from a teacher lecturing. Like, I know I certainly was not meant to do that, but I was forced to. And we see, like, school shootings, like the mass shootings. That is a sign of a social disease. And it's simply a symptom of a sick society. Like, that's what it is. And some of these kids who get so, like, if you look at school shooters, a lot of them are bullied. A lot of them don't feel like they belong. A lot of them shouldn't really even be at school. Like, that's not how they're meant to learn. And if some of those types can just learn from the comfort of their home, like, they're more like socially isolating types, they prefer just to, like, be at home, maybe even play video games with friends. Like, they just prefer not to be out there socializing because they don't fully get it. If more of those type of people have the choice to work from home and learn from home, we could see more harmony. You know, the more outgoing type can go to school and do that thing. And so what this whole pandemic has done from this other, like, the new earth perspective, is it's opened us up. It's cracked our system so that we can have these new growth of this new earth coming through. So what we're going to experience, what we really need to experience, is more major world events. And that's simply what's going to happen, unless everyone goes to bed and wakes up enlightened. Unless everyone has these epiphanies of, oh, I get it. I should help my fellow man.
Right.
Which probably is going to happen. So we're going to see events that take place that shift consciousness.
Yeah.
And we can either see it from the perspective of fear, or we can see it from the perspective of love and evolution. And there's another book that I forgot to mention before, but The Law of One, the raw materials.
Another one I've been hearing a lot about lately that I got to get into.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant channeled material that has a lot of potent truth. And just really, really quick, it's Ra is in the Egyptian sun god, like the Egyptian, like, god of gods, like the main head honcho. And it was actually, it's a fifth density social memory complex, which is multiple kind of soul organism that all exists as a single entity, a single unit, which is an evolution of beings, of human existence, of existence. And it was channeled in Egypt, ancient Egypt, and it was given the people some super potent knowledge to live better lives. But the knowledge was distorted by the pharaohs, the higher ups, and it was used, it was, turned into, like, the sun god. It was turned into something that they could then use as information to have people then fear the rulers and control the people. So the message was distorted. But in the 1970s, there was a group of people who started to get into channeling, and Ra started to come into their channelings, and they wrote five, I believe it was 5 books that were all just transcriptions of all the channelings. And in it, they describe Ra, this social memory complex, this higher intelligent race of consciousness, describes being of service to self or of service to others. And the new earth is going to be one that is majority service to others. And the way to enlighten, the way to evolve through consciousness, is to be more of service to others than we are of service to self. And it's actually not that much more. It's like a little bit over 50% is being of service to others. That lets you climb up that ladder. But it's actually more difficult than it sounds, because we're by nature kind of like selfish creatures. Like, We have to make sure that we're taken care of. Like that's very important to focus on yourself. Make sure you're making money and you have food and you have shelter and you have all that. But in the future, we will be so of service to others that having shelter, having food, and having medical care will be 100% universal, that we're all taking care of each other. So as we evolve, what the new earth is going to be is one in which we all, it's like we're moving up the chakra system. And if you're familiar with like all the chakras, start with the root chakra, which is fear, which is like survival. The next one is sexuality. The next one's power. And those are the lower chakras. And then it gets in like the heart and all the cool, like third eye and all that wonderful stuff.
Right.
But humanity is currently in the lower chakras. We're in the third chakra, which is power, dominance, male, masculinity, overtaking the planet and like dominating. Yeah, we just got a new country and these are our borders. Like, we'll fight you if you try to take it. Like that, it's power. It's pure masculine energy. And now we're moving up to the next chakra, which it goes masculine, feminine, and feminine, which is the heart chakra, which is this next one that society's moving into. The heart chakra is us taking care of the planet and taking care of each other.
Right.
And that is being of service to others.
I've never heard it from that perspective before. I never even heard the whole idea of it going masculine, feminine. I've never heard that before. Yeah, that's all my own stuff that I channeled in through what I've done. And it just, I just downloaded. I'm like, wait a minute, it is masculine. And if you look at it, it's like very much masculine, feminine, moving upward. And then society as well is going through the chakras. So we're essentially going upward. And if you keep going up, you start to get into speaking truth, which is sacred knowledge and information that enlightens people. And once the truth comes out, once people get enlightened through speech, it then goes up to the third eye, which is telepathy, which is we are all one, we're all connected, and we open up that channel, that connection. Yes. In the new earth, we will be telepathic. We will be communicating telepathically. Right. And I personally already started doing this with people that I'm friends with who we're evolving consciously together. And it's groups of people where nothing is taboo. We share openly and honestly, vulnerably with each other about everything that's happening in our lives. And we do it in a conscious way where it's about evolution. And the more this is my own philosophy, but the more that we share, the more telepathic we become. Because what blocks telepathy is like wanting to hide something, like wanting to hide sexuality, like certain things that you're ashamed of in your past. And, I can't share it because people will judge me. But if you have like a safe container where you can just share your like traumas from childhood or sexual thoughts and ideas that you think is like too taboo, or you want to just like share like openly and honestly about spirituality with people, the more you do that, the more you train your telepathic mind to be open and receptive, because you're not trying to hide who you are inside. Exactly. That makes perfect sense, man. Yeah, that is so true. Because one thing I noticed when I was in a higher state of consciousness with one of my friends one time, we were just sharing so much. And I was after holding a secret from him for 4 years. And I was just like, I realize now, man, like I can't feel completely connected to you right now because I've never told you this. And I feel like I've been scared to tell you. And he's like, what's that? So I told him. And then after I told him, we just ended up hugging and crying together for like 20 minutes straight. And I literally felt like we became one being. Like I didn't feel like I was hugging him, he was hugging me. It was just like I was part of this conjoined vibrating energy, and I was just one experiencer of it. And I was like, man, that's the key. Like you got to abolish all boundaries between each other, and then you can truly feel that connection feeling, and it's beyond anything you could ever imagine, man. Yeah, because when those walls come down, your energy starts to blend. Yes, exactly. You feel that oneness. Yeah. And with my friends who I'm just like open with, and we share and we love, like the telepathy comes through. I'm thinking about them, they'll text me.
we're in the same room and I have something on my mind and they go, is there something on your mind? Like you can start to feel that there's something to be shared.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where the serendipity is so through the roof. It's like every day there's like something crazy that's just like, whoa, like
I know, right?
Like, I was literally just about to say this. You said it. Yeah. So you start to really like your energy start to blend together.
Yeah, I know it happens all the time to me now. It's mind blowing. But like even at the same time, it's like, yeah, this is how it is. I just accept it that this is how it works now, That's very true. Oh man, all good stuff. All right. So I feel like that's a good way to bring it to a close. Any things that you want to cover before we do it? Like we still got about a 20-minute window there, but I'll leave it open for you.
Man. Yeah, we really went through it all. It's cool. Having this whole long form format is unique. I usually end mine at about an hour. So it's just like a quick, almost like introduction and like, let's share a story or two. Right. But having like this 3-hour format is really cool because you can really go deep and
exactly right.
It's like when you're camping with people. I love the analogy of camping because like you camp for like 3 nights is like the perfect amount because the first day everyone's like they still have their mask on. They're still like like, oh, hey, what's up? You're still like just kind of like being this like friendly. I'm still wearing my mask.
Right.
And then
you're playing your part.
And then day 2 of camping, it's like, oh, we're actually going to be here for like 4 days, like 3 nights. Like, all right, this is a lot. I don't know if I can hold that up. And all of a sudden people start to become more real and more real. And then like, the next night, and there's like this significant moment you recognize you're all going to leave in a day. And like, yeah, it really creates this bonding connection. And I feel so this long form format.
So it's kind of like the podcast is like the camping parallel, only each hour is a day.
Each hour is a day. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Because we're into the 3rd hour here now. We're approaching the 3rd hour. Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. And I feel as though conscious people around the world are connecting right now. And it's super important now more than ever to put your voice out there and share. Because like you and I, like we are living in that throat chakra. Like we're a few chakras above where society's at.
Right.
And we're the way showers. Like we are pointing the direction of where to go and how to live the best life. And so for people who are listening right now and feel energized and excited, it's really about sharing and just putting yourself out there without any attachment to the outcome and really not worrying about what people think, which is one of the most difficult things for a lot of spiritual people because of past lives of being killed for like beliefs and things like that. And so, yeah, just keep putting it out there. And I feel this connection between you and I, super cool, like brotherhood, maybe we're from the same, star system or something, but
yeah,
I'm a creator. I love creating. I've started over like 9 companies and I feel as though creating something with all of us, like this, like online festival, like something where it's just, we can all come together and just keep spreading it. But like, I think there's power in numbers. So yeah, I'm just putting that out there because I think there's some magic that could potentially happen.
Yes. Just put it out there. See how it evolves. I'm interested in doing something like that too. Like that's the whole point for me, is to put, my whole thing from the beginning has been to share truth and love in every way I possibly can. And, it occurred to me several times over the past years to start like a podcast or something, but I just didn't feel it was the right time. And then sometime last year, I just said, screw it, got together with one of my buddies and sat down, just pressed record on my iPhone and ended up talking for like 5 hours. And then later on that year, I made a big move. And then last November, I had to leave a job I was in. I was like, man, why aren't I doing what I want to be doing? And then I just said, screw it. I'm going to start that podcast that I've been talking about for years. And then ever since then, it's just been amazing, man. The people I've come in contact with, the connections I've made has been absolutely amazing. And it just keeps growing all the time, exponentially. It's unreal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and I are on a very similar path too. I started a podcast like a year ago, and it was just like a few kind of test runs, really, and the podcast I started was called Infinite Potential, like to help people tune into their infinite potential. And I got to like episode, I had never released anything. It was all just, I had just been building a few episodes to release it.
Right.
And then my friend sent me a podcast, Deepak Chopra's podcast. And they're like, you got to check this podcast out. It's so good. And so I click a link and it's like, hey, I'm Deepak. Welcome to Infinite Potential. And I was like, I'm like, okay, if anyone is going to pass on this baton and take it somewhere, go for it. Like, we're all connected, and kind of like we're tuning into that concept. But I then stepped away, and now we're both starting at the same time, and now I'm with like deep shift because the whole planet's shifting. It's like the perfect time to talk about this stuff. Yeah. And so I'm just it's a good time to utilize our voice and our truth.
Yeah,
and the more we put out there, the better it is. And what I realized, because I think a lot of people have intimidation. I certainly had a lot of intimidation about putting my voice out there and putting what I believe out there. Is that a lot of people don't really care too much about anyone. Right. Like people don't really care too much, and quite naturally, if they're not interested, they won't tune in.
Yeah,
and if they don't care enough. If they like don't like what you're saying enough, they can then reach out to you. Like, let's say there's a friend. I always had this like idea of like family or friends or someone who would like, I would be embarrassed about speaking truth about spirituality and all that. If I just shared everything I wanted to share, it's now up to them to come to me and be like, this is weird. I don't,
Yeah.
And once I realized that, I was like, that's a pretty huge step for them to even do that.
Right.
And so they're probably not going to do that. And if all they do is just judge me for like talking about aliens and like being weird, then that's kind of just on them. Like if they never bring it up to me, it's not going to affect me at all whatsoever. Right. Yeah. So then I can still live in my world where I share my truth, and they just have all that knowledge of Mike talking about, aliens and higher consciousness and chakras and all that. It's like,
exactly.
I'm okay with that because it's planting seeds. And the more you put out there, the more natural it becomes, to the point where it's like, it's not about even sharing the truth anymore, but it's about entertainment and how can we get people interested enough to tune into what we have to say.
Yeah, man, I experienced the exact same thing. When I first started putting out anything, the first thing I actually released like to the world that kind of reflected me at all, I just started making YouTube videos. The summer of 2017, and I'd sat on them for like 6 months. I never put anything out until the January of 2018. And then when I did, I was like, this is weird, but I'm ready. Like I don't feel like I don't let judgment of people get me down anymore. And it's going to be weird. Like people might say some stuff, but whatever, man, just put it out there. You got no fear anymore. And then I did. And then I was like, a lot of my friends and family members are going to see this side of me. Like they all see, like I'm always truthful with everyone in my life, but I will only go so far with certain people, just because I realize like if I say certain things, they'll just like completely shut it out. So I'll just be like, but in this form, I'm like, you clicked on my thing. So you got you came here to hear me. So you decided to hear it. So this is what it is, man. So I started with just a bunch of videos, and then I kind of lost the motivation for that. Like, I don't know what it was. It felt very unnatural for me to just sit in front of a camera and speak. But then when I started the podcast, it was a totally different thing, because for me, it's all about conversation. It's all about connecting with someone, right? So, and now my most radical ideas are on the internet for anybody to hear, it has been unnerving at some points, but, I'll just meditate on it and find out exactly what's bothering me, and then I can let it go. But I do say some pretty radical stuff in terms of what's normally accepted, but I don't care anymore. It's got to be done.
And there's a lot of power in that too. And I was reading an article by Tim Ferriss, who's got one of the most popular podcasts on the planet. And he was talking about fame and what comes with fame and kind of the dark side of fame.
Right.
And he said that there's a lot of power in him sharing so much about his life and like his psychedelic use and all of that, because people then couldn't use it against him. He shared it so openly, and like, this is like what I do, and like his journey with like, all different sorts of things within his life. He was able to share it just so openly that it's like, it's out there and like people know, and it's just like that, it is what it is. And then no one could then, it wasn't like this like dark secret that like, I'm going to blackmail you. You know, there's none of that. It's just, this is me and this is who I am. And I just have fun with life and try to, you know, be the best version of myself. So yeah, I think there's a lot of power and I've actually only experienced beauty in sharing my point of view. Like literally, like if we're really going to get down to it, like all the fears aside, like I have only experienced amazing serendipity. The more I put out there, the more friends I get, the more like soul family I get to know, the more people who are like friends with me in the past who are like, hey, that's like really cool. And that changed my life. And this helped me so much. And it's like, it's actually a wonderful thing.
It really is, man. That's incredible. Like I've encountered very little resistance, like overall. Like there was like 1 or 2 times where people made comments and we're just like, that doesn't make sense. And then we'd end up having a conversation and we'd come to some compromise and end up being friends anyways. Like it's just always beautiful. Like I haven't had anybody that's outright try to destroy me or hate me or anything like that. Nothing of that happened. It's all been beauty, man. Every experience I've had because of this, putting myself out there, is like for a large majority, it's been nothing but beautiful experiences.
Yeah. And you get the trolls every now and then that you very much recognize that there's in it for the attention. And
sure, yeah.
They don't really actually care too much, but it's very easy to type on the internet. However, when you start to get those trolls and those people who are maybe complaining or the pushback, then you've reached a pretty, like, you've reached a level of success when these people are, having these opposing viewpoints. That's actually,
if you're big enough to have haters, then that's a pretty good sign.
100%. Yeah,
that's very true. Yeah, man. All right, so just to close things off, let's do the regular old where can we find you type of thing. What is your things? What are you doing these days? Where, your Insta, your website, your YouTube, whatever you got, give it to me.
Right now, all my energy is being channeled into my Deep Shift project, which is all about the shift in consciousness that's taking place on this planet, the shift in humanity. And that's deepshiftnow.com. And I have the podcast, a YouTube channel. You can find it all at deepshiftnow.com. And I'm most active on Instagram, which is just @deepshift.
Cool.
And that's it. Now is all Deep Shift. Yeah. I have so many ideas and thoughts. But if you follow me in any of those places, that's where I'm going to be.
You'll get it.
Sharing any new ventures that come out.
Excellent, man. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so
much
for being a guest.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love this platform you've created. You've got a great voice for this. You've got a great mind for this. And I wish you just abundance of success.
Likewise. Let's change this world together, my brother.
Let's do it. Sounds great.
Peace.